Harley, and I am so happy to be here with all of you. How are we doing, Dan? Thanks, everyone. Yo, Carl, welcome in. Nice to see you in a live stream. So, everyone, as you know, I wasn't here last week. I wasn't very well. I did upload my video on Thursday. Next week you will be seeing my lion reaction. If you're not on the Patreon, they've already seen it. But you'll be seeing my lion reaction next week. I've added a lot of new things to the stream. There are some very cool effects and things that I've been working on. So I may interlace them throughout this video. And essentially, get over it. Today we're doing an introduction to Xenos. Because that is incredibly important and y'all won't shut up about it. So that's what we're going to be doing. I hope y'all are as excited as I am. Mateo! Suffer not the alien to live. Incredible, Mateo, making us all laugh as always. Oh, so there is a lot of sound effects that I've been adding because I feel like these reactions need something more, and I don't feel like I can verbally articulate all the things that I want to. So I've decided I'm going to get a lot more dramatic. Buckle up. Are we ready to begin? We're going to be starting with the one, the only, Luton. So, hope y'all are dead excited about that. And if not, tough. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Only war. Hey, girl! War, raw war power knows nothing of casualty. There was no boundary to what had been, what was, and what might continue to pass. Drama. Unfortunately, I won't be here for long work calls, but if by the end you're not sold on the Necrons or the Orcs, I will raise hell. Like that? Is that what you're gonna do? Like I said, I've added a lot of things. I'm not fully set up with my buttons yet, I apologise. That's karma! Alright. What the heck? I'm fucking up. I need to learn how to control these buttons. I apologise. I will learn the buttons and also not interrupt stream too much. I will, I promise. Mateo has already caused the stream apocalypse. Thank you, Mateo, for deciding that stream needed to be already affected. Big surprise. Big. everyone. I hope you're all amazing. I've missed you guys.
We return now to continue to investigate the dark mysteries of the past. We will discover new fragments of knowledge, some perhaps not so commonly held. We will explore how the pieces of the puzzle begin to come together and formulate for us an understanding of some of the most significant events and entities the galaxy has known.
Hi Leo, welcome in.
And with that knowledge we might hope to come to a further understanding that the knowledge needed to save humanity need not necessarily come from the Emperor and his lapdogs like Rogue or Dawn. In some respects this...
Lapdogs. You know what? You know what? Just for the use of lapdogs. Rodent Snorn getting ripped into early in the video, I can go with that.
Process has already begun. What we will explore ties in very well with my last thoughts on the Emperor, that he was arrogant to believe that he alone could be the saviour for humanity, or indeed that he still very well could be. Even now, the Mechanicus of Mars, after the events of Cadia, have begun to explore and harvest the material known as Blackstone, for this could hold the key to sealing the void that has torn the galaxy apart. The Necron knew this, and they'd used it for millions of years to hold the warp at bay, as well as their enemies and psychers that are an anathema to them. The Eldar knew it too, for the Eldar would also be among the first to use it, in the crafting of the Blackstone fortresses, otherwise known as the Talismans of Vol. Vol being the Eldar smith god, the finest craftsman ever known, he would be responsible for some of the Eldar's most lasting achievements, but the tale of his and their gods is one of betrayal and tragedy. It is of course true that the Eldar were once very much at one with the warp itself. They did not fear it as they do now, they embraced it, bathed in its energy.
But that was before they brought Slaanesh. Slaanesh.
It was only when they came to understand the power and subjective evil that could be brought into existence therein that allowed them to see why they must treat it with care, even retreat from it to a degree. This was long before the fall, with the passage of time and stirring forces within the warp. It would find
I don't hate you, streamers, right now. Okay? Okay. Streamers right now, Alpaca.
unleash the means of their own destruction. We will ultimately reach our goal of concluding the Chaos God's origins in part 3. Today though we'll be talking extensively about the Eldar, and you would be fair in wondering why.
Yeah.
Well, for one, it should be obvious by now that the Eldar have had a huge influence across the whole history of the galaxy. They have been far more involved with the warp than many other races, but this is not the only reason. There are other important factors, and through exploring the Eldar we can understand more. And learn
Get off my Twitch! Get off my Twitch! You know what, Alpaca, because of you, I'm going to do a poll for Stern. You gave this video a thumbs down, is that okay? Sure. If you want to give me a thumbs down, do it. Get off my Twitch.
Learn about the warp and psychic forces. The Eldar culture is rich and fascinating, as is their history and mythology, but most specifically we'll consider the souls of their kind and all mortal races. And it is by positioning the events of the galaxy upon one another and by comparing differences between the Eldar and humanity that enables us to reach the most logical, in my opinion anyway, conclusions regarding the Chaos Gods. There is so very little written about the Chaos God's origins and about the nature of things like time in the warp as we looked at previously, and we'll expand on this further as well in the third video. And when you have so little direct information, it's necessary to approach matters almost by a process of elimination. Whatever you're left with after discounting all other factors, no matter how improbable, must be the truth of things.
I've just realised I had a request from one of you all. It was Leo. So I'm going to make sure that that's done now. So I'm going to just check that my chat is on stream. Okay? Bear with me. I know that this is a bit annoying, but it's for inclusion. It's to make sure that nothing's missed, and it's been specifically requested, so I'm not going to ignore that. So just bear with me one moment while I make sure that I've got a chat box. Sorry about this. Alright. Chaos Madge. Chaos makes you think of Sonic. That's fair. It's sunny today, is it? That's pretty cool. But yeah, I want to make sure that I do what the people want. Okay, can someone type and just see if this chat works? I hope it does. Nice browser source, thanks.
Luckily for us, I think the conclusions after linking all the information available, not all that difficult or improbable. Lastly, in reference to the War in Heaven, it's most commonly known that there are two periods known as the War in Heaven. The first war between the Old Ones and the Necron tier, and later between the Old Ones and Eldar versus Catan and Necron. Now, as you may be aware, this is confusingly not the only periods that are referred to as the War in Heaven.
We've been very Imperium-centric overall, so I decided we should share the love a bit and expand the knowledge base, know thy enemy and whatnot. To be fair, I'm more likely to side with them than I am the humans, so y'all are just pulling a dangerous side. You should have kept me on the Imperial, maybe I would have turned one day. Probably not, but maybe.
One other thing that seems to confuse many is that the Necron tier and Necron are not always referred to as such in a clearly defined way in relation to their history. What I mean...
Yo, Mirror, welcome in, I hope you're well. I hope everyone's well. Y'all haven't told me you're okay. That's true, Dan, but hear me out on this. One humanist...
by this is that some races like the Eldar seem to still refer to them as Necron tier even in the current age, even after they've suffered through the process of bioconversion to become Necron. So this can be really misleading because if you read Necron tier as always referring to the early pre-Catan period, this can make things in terms of time very muddled. So as always, knowing the context around who they're referring to is fairly important. And we'll begin by exploring something that I've long struggled to fully comprehend, because there is a great deal of contradiction and subjective interpretation surrounding Eldar mythology. It also has no definitive timeline order or even real structure. Yet the Eldar mythology is of importance to us because it deals with some of the first warp creations, and it's deeply connected with the very centre of who the Eldar are as a race. And
when Game Workshop do Eldar lore, they always keep getting clapped. I mean, my next suggestion is definitely an Imperium, just one trying to be fair.
Indeed, their own origins. Most importantly though, through exploring the Eldar, as I say, it helps us come to further conclusions about our ultimate goals, the Chaos Gods.
Dun dun dun!
How would they come into existence? No one will likely ever truly know now. From the fragmented scraps of information that survive, it is said that they were the first to walk among the stars of the galaxy.
Thank you, Stern. Can we have a round of applause for Sternly, who always remembers to upvote the stream? I mean, the elves created God by clapping, so it's accurate that they get clapped! Okay. Just gonna get back to the...
Mysterious beings remembered now by a rare few, and they were the Old Ones.
Oh,
they were the creators. They would seed worlds with life. They saw the value in all living creatures and beings, and they were eternal.
Isn't it
They were not
just?
constrained by the passage of time, appearing godlike to some, yet they were also mortal. These benefits not apparent for those with whom they shared the galaxy, the ancient race of the Necron tier, its people ravaged by the extreme solar radiation damaging their DNA, fundamentally altering their race genetically, crippling their lifespan. The Necron tier's planet orbited too close to their sun, and for this, They suffered greatly. Their society became obsessed with escaping this inescapable sentence of death, their only option seemingly to escape their homeworld, and as they set out to explore the galaxy, they did so in stasis ships, because they had discovered to their horror that this generational damage had shortened their lifespans, and no matter where they travelled, they were followed by this shadow of death, and this greatly limited the expansion of their race.
So it sounds like the Eldar have a really sad tale. Am I right? Is this the Necrons going to be just more sadness?
Expand they did, but even when they were free of their damaging proximity to the sun, they could not escape the eternal shadow hanging over them.
Right?
When the Necron tier would finally encounter the old ones, they would learn of their seemingly immortal lifespan.
Okay, I actually know this story. So, check my understanding. So, oh, don't worry. Oh, it's done. Don't even worry about it. So, as far as I'm aware, the Necrons knew that they could die. So they went to the old ones to ask for immortality. They said no. They said they're not going to get it. So the Necrons teamed up with the Eldar, the Dark Eldar, well, I think the Eldar. And then they got tricked into becoming slave people. And then they ended up destroying the old ones. There's like barely any old ones left, if any at all. Am I correct? If I'm wrong, like... But I think I'm right. With Catan. Oh, okay. I say wrong weird. How do I say wrong weird? Okay, so it's Catan, not the Eldar. Okay. So it's like confusion, but like, I don't think I'm full clown status.
They suffered greatly. Their society became obsessed with escaping this inescapable sentence of death, their only option seemingly to escape their homeworld, and as they set out to explore the galaxy...
Wait. Do you guys actually think I say wrong? Wrong? Wait, do y'all actually think I say it weird? I'm gonna have a complex. Someone tell me if I say it weird. Oh my god. I can't believe y'all just dropped this on me. No! Don't make fun of me! Alright, go back to the video. You guys will get distracted when something good happens. It's just a regional dialect. It's wrong. I used to do singing. We have to pronounce every damn syllable. After they were tricked by the Catan. Gotcha. When are you getting your HyperX house? In like 2 months when I can afford it. I will be getting it. Welcome in, Dean, by the way. This is my lore YouTube. We're just chilling, watching some Warhammer lore. I don't know if you know anything about Warhammer. If you don't worry, me too. Yay! There's Spenatu! Hello! Welcome in! What are the words you say weird? Apparently coin. Your accent adds a twang to the G. Insane. Insane. Can't believe that. HyperX gang gang! Thank you. Now, I was showing everyone that I had some new sound effects. Coin. Coin! Like a pound coin. I'm gonna scream. I'm gonna scream. I'm gonna scream. Guys, stop it. Oh no, don't start taking the piss out of how I say things, please. This is gonna become the worst thing of my life. We're only 7 minutes into this video. It's coin, yeah. Coin. I'm gonna play the video. You guys will get distracted in like 5 minutes. And thank you, Dean, for bringing Spanner.
They did so in stasis ships because they had discovered to their horror that this generational damage had shortened their lifespans, and no matter where they travelled, they were followed by this shadow of death, and this greatly limited the expansion of their race. Yet expand they did. But even when they were free of their damaging proximity to the sun, they could not escape the eternal shadow hanging over them. When the Necron tier would finally encounter the old ones, they would learn of their seemingly immortal lifespan. Consumed by envy, they were desperate for the knowledge that would enable them to turn the tables of fate. But the old ones resisted them. This was their knowledge, it was not for the Necron tier.
Damn.
The Necron tier as a race had been strong through its unity, but as they expanded they became somewhat fractured over millennia, some vying for independence from the ruling Triarch, and this would lead to what was known as the First War of Secession.
You know what, Liam? I didn't say hello to you earlier, so first I want to apologise and acknowledge the irony that the first Catan they found was the one eating their own son. They were ruined by the Catan right from the start. It's true. It's true. I completely missed that comment. And Matteo, not everyone has a bad taste except for orcs. 40k is all sadness. Yeah, that's true. The whole thing is. As an Irish person, I'm going to sidestep accents in the English language in general. That's a good thing to do. Just listen to Harley say words. No, I feel like you guys are going to take the mick out of me.
The ruling Triarch struggled to maintain control, and in an attempt to prevent the civil war that was already spanning entire realms from turning into an outright disaster, they needed something to once again reunite their people as they had been before. Something to allow the heavily damaging self-destruction to cease.
Oh, and Stanley! Just because I know this will interest you more than anyone else, I've actually got new sounds for like donations and everything. It's really cool. Just gonna do some editing in a minute. I'm like, hell yeah, let's go. Well, I'm Raven Guard. I lurk in the shadows and show up at random. It's true, Liam. It's true. You just hid from me. That's okay. So glad I have more of a general accent for an Irish person. I get that. Stanley is his name. Is that bait? No. Stern's... Oh, I haven't got... 1 sec. Because Stern was the most recent donator. Well, before this one. But like... Oh my god. I'm not even going to get into this. I'm going to watch the video.
Saw the ideal way to achieve this would be by using the bitter resentment that had grown from the Old One's rejection of gifting the Necron tier their secrets of long life. The Triarch would unite their people with this goal as their prize and wage a war against these stubborn and much hated First Ones. And it was this first galactic war which became known as the War in Heaven. An important detail I feel is often overlooked is that the Necron tier had highly advanced technology even at this time. It's certainly questionable that they may have found other means to extend their lives if they were given time, and it was only the desire of the ruling Triarch who wished to prevent the disintegration of a unified Necron tier. So, while the Old One's secrets of long life were their superficial goal, this was not the main objective, a fact which in retrospect seems much more troubling given the events which would ultimately come to pass.
Am I the one who thinks they should have just given them the power to be immortal? Just shared the knowledge? Is it bad that I saw alpaca teddies in my local shop and thought of alpaca calling people molten slags? That's alpaca for you. Calling us molten slags. We'll have a little look at that later. I can talk you through that in a bit to see what's going on there. Necronite culture was obsessed with death, so no. Oh, okay.
While the Necron tier were an advanced race by this time, their technology was still no match for the Old Ones, who would use a powerful technology of their own, known now as the Webway, to travel vast distances with ease. The Webway is essentially a space that exists outside of material space, but separated from the warp. It enables those within to pass from one area of the galaxy to another with extremely reduced travel time. Not entirely dissimilarly to something like a wormhole. Travelling through the Webway, though, is also achieved by psychic power. It also operates as a psychic communication net, not simply pathways to travel through. So this enabled the Old Ones a powerful tactical advantage to always be a step ahead of the Necron tier, not just in movement, but knowing and talking and communicating about where they're going to be. And this meant
I love how the space Egyptians end as robots. Me too. That's pretty cool.
The Necron tier could never make any real gains versus the Old Ones. Eventually the Necron tier would be pushed back to their own star system, and the Old Ones, having bested them with ease, now considered the Necron tier to be nothing more than an irritation and a civilization who, if necessary, could be pushed back again.
Fair.
The Necron tier, as a result of this miserable defeat and failure to acquire the Old One's secrets of extended life, would descend into yet more infighting, and this would consequently herald the Second Wars of Secession.
He doesn't come here.
The governing Necron Triarch were now desperate to again maintain control and avoid the already weakened Necron tier civilization from just tearing itself apart, or what little now remained of their crippled civilization.
Dorian's probably pretending as a
As
life.
fate would have it, a means to accomplish this would become apparent for them, except the Necron tier could never have imagined the cost that would be demanded of them in order for them,
Ask and you
and
shall
he
receive.
felt somehow
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
Dollar, dollar.
Thank you, Stern! I wasn't asking though! But it's a cool sound, right? Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
hollow, empty, and he came to realise that this was no passing feeling, that feeling of an empty void, and that this process
Ask and you shall receive.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
Dollar, dollar.
I don't know why it played twice, but thank you! Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. Thank you. Okay.
he felt somehow hollow, empty, and he came to realise that this was no passing feeling, that feeling of an empty void, and that this process had not been simply the stripping away of organic material, it had been the stripping away of his soul, that the Catan had consumed all of the souls of the Necron tier. They had lost all that they were, and now only existed as soulless automatons, known as the Necron.
Dio.
But the Necron in these new bodies had achieved what the Catan promised. They were immortal, and disease or damage from their sun's radiation were no longer going to be a threat or a concern for them.
Thank
They were
you.
indeed united, though perhaps not how they originally envisaged. The Necron had been embedded through their creation process with command protocols that forced them into loyalty to obey the Silent King. Empowered from their gluttonous orgy of devouring what had been the Necron tier, coupled with their powerful army, the Necrons, the Catan and Silent King waged war upon the Old Ones.
Gluttonous. I only wish I was quicker on the draw. What do you mean quicker on the draw? Like, did the video skip? Oh god, I hope not. I thought it might have. Let's go back.
Reunite their people as they had been before, something to allow the heavily damaging self-destruction
Yeah, I think
to
it did.
cease. They saw the ideal way to achieve this would be by using the bitter resentment that had grown from the Old One's rejection
Yeah.
of gifting the Necron
Yeah, this
tier
is it.
their secrets of long life. The
Big thank you, Liam, for noticing that before I did.
Triarch would unite their people with this goal as their prize and wage a war against these stubborn and much hated First Ones. And it was this first galactic war which became known as the War in Heaven. An important detail I feel is often overlooked is that the Necron tier had highly advanced technology even at this time. It's certainly questionable that they may have found other means to extend their lives if they were given time, and it was
They
only
didn't
the
have time.
desire of the ruling Triarch who wished to prevent the disintegration of a unified Necron tier. So, while the Old Ones' secrets of long life were their superficial goal, this was not the main objective, a fact which in retrospect seems much more troubling given the events which would ultimately come to pass. While the Necron tier were an advanced race by this time, their technology was still no match for the Old Ones, who would use a powerful technology of their own, known now as the Webway, to
I didn't even realise that happened.
travel vast distances with ease. The Webway is essentially a space that exists outside of material space, but separated from the warp. It enables those within to pass from one area of the galaxy to another with extremely reduced travel time. Not entirely dissimilarly to something like a wormhole. Travelling through the Webway, though, is also achieved by psychic power.
Thank
It
you,
also
Stanley.
operates as a psychic communication net, not simply pathways to travel through. So this enabled the Old Ones a powerful tactical advantage to always be a step ahead of the Necron tier, not just in movement, but knowing and talking and communicating about where they're going to be. and this meant the Necron tier could never make any real gains versus the old ones. Eventually the Necron tier would be pushed back to their own star system, and the old ones, having bested them with ease, now considered the Necron tier to be nothing more than an irritation and a civilization who, if necessary, could be pushed back again.
Yeah, we're definitely up to where we were, so apologies for missing 3 minutes by accident.
The Necron tier, as a result of this miserable defeat and failure to acquire the Old One's secrets of extended life, would descend into yet more infighting, and this would consequently herald the Second Wars of Secession. The governing Necron Triarch were now desperate to again maintain control and avoid the already weakened Necron tier civilization from just tearing itself apart, or what little now remained of their crippled civilization. As fate would have it, a means to accomplish this would become apparent for them, except the Necron tier could never have imagined the cost that would be demanded of them in order for them to achieve the goals they now sought more bitterly than ever.
We know what that is.
For the Necron tier detected strange entities that appeared to be feeding on the very stars of the galaxy. They had for the longest time studied and paid close attention to the star of their own system, and upon noticing some strange occurrences, it is said that the Necron tier either found a way to contact these beings, or that their burning hatred for the Old Ones sang out so strongly across space that it would attract these entities. The truth of such matters is not particularly relevant, but what seems to be the case is that these beings, when first discovered, were in fact fairly passive.
No, you didn't. Where did you donate? On the on-screen link? The on-stream link? Alvaca, did you seriously donate? Because I, like... On GayPal? Aw, don't. One second. You've done it through the anonymous donation. But what I will say is...
Here comes the money.
Thank you for the penny!
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
Dollar. Thank you for the 1 penny. I very much appreciate that. Unfortunately, you did do it through the anonymous donation. Alpaca. I say penny normally? Good. Is it donation? It comes up every once in a while. My bot does it for me. I don't control the donation link. You know what? That's a really good question for you to ask. My walls are incredibly thick. My neighbours have never once made a noise complaint against me. And they should. They really should. Because I am so loud. So loud. But they haven't. And I am so shocked. They're not. I've met them, but good theory. Okay, where is my stream labs? I've just checked. The bot is on. I'm having such technical difficulties today. It's unreal. Hopefully it'll calm down. Can you guys stop testing my setup? My setup's not secure enough for this. There we go. Took a while. But yeah, there you go.
Or at least unaware of such things as mortal races. They were just entities who had existed since the dawn of time, who were hungry for sustenance, and they had seemingly found this through the energy of stars themselves, which they would then devour. Knowing that to truly understand the mortal world, these beings could never comprehend without manifesting in a form similar to their own. And the Necron tier used their knowledge of living metal to forge bodies for these dark star gods to transfer into. These incomprehensible forces were compressed into the false living metal bodies provided by the Necron tier, and these entities were the Catan incarnate, taking the form of the Necron tier's half-forgotten gods. The Catan provided the Necron tier with more advanced weapons and inertialess drives, sidestepping the problems that had hindered them in the past. The Catan known as the Deceiver would come before the Necron tier leader, the Silent King, And this Catan claimed that they had fought the Old Ones before and lost, and they had a desire to, together with the Necron tier, wage a war against the Old Ones again. An alliance that would not only reunite the Necron tier, but achieve their long sought after prize of immortally long life.
Pokemon? What do you mean Pokemon? I like Pokemon. What's going on with the Pokemons? Is there something going on with Pokemon that I don't know about? I love Pokemon. I do a Pokemon impression on Twitch.
If any of this were actually true is unknown, but despite some in the royal court of the Necron tier raising concerns over this alliance and what it might mean for their race, the Silent King would agree to the alliance. The immortality the Necron tier had desired for so long was revealed to be not as they had imagined. The Catan would give the Necron tier what they wanted, but only through a process of biotransference. And with the pact sealed, the Necron tier began the process of entering the colossal biofurnaces that never ceased in their operation of harvesting the life of the Necron tier, processing them and leaving them trapped in bodies of their own living metal. The Catan swarmed these sites and feasted upon the life energy of the Necron tier.
That's funny, and I didn't actually think about that, so
Bender, honey, we love you.
Yeah, baby, I know it.
that was not the right one.
But not all of the Necron tier would go so willingly, because they were still a sentient, free-thinking race at this time. And when it eventually would become clear that no amount of persuasion could appease those who resisted, those individuals would attempt to rebel and resist, but would ultimately be crushed. These surviving rebel Necron tier would be dragged against their will into the vast biofurnaces to have their identities stripped away. These resistance Necron tier dynasties would later be punished for this by being placed in campaigns that had slim chances of success, and despite their regenerative ways would suffer the most damage. Much later in time, when the Necron would turn against the Catan, these leaders of their people, these resistants who had kept some semblance of their former selves, would fight the most ferociously against their godlike leaders. The Silent King realised he had made a terrible mistake, one that now could not be reversed. Like many Necron tier reborn, he felt invigorated and refreshed to be rid of the aches and fears that organic life brought with it, but at the same time he felt somehow hollow, empty, and he came to realise that this was no passing feeling, that feeling of an empty void, and that this process had not been simply the stripping away of organic material, it had been the stripping away of his soul, that the Catan had consumed all of the souls of the Necron tier. They had lost all that they were, and now only existed as soulless automatons, known as the Necron. Yet the Necron in these new bodies had achieved what the Catan promised. They were immortal, and disease or damage from their sun's radiation were no longer going to be a threat or a concern for them. They were indeed united, though perhaps not how they originally envisaged. The Necron had been embedded through their creation process with command protocols that forced them into loyalty to obey the Silent King.
That's so funny. Imagine just taking away everyone's autonomy and making them into your own personal army. Couldn't be me, couldn't be the Emperor, couldn't be everyone. Have you ever heard of servitors? It's the same damn thing.
Empowered from their gluttonous orgy of devouring what had been the Necron tier, coupled with their powerful army, the Necrons, the Catan and Silent King waged war upon the Old Ones, in what would become known as the Second War in Heaven.
Yep.
The Catan, now at full power, unleashed forces beyond anything that can be comprehended in the modern day of the Imperium. Across the galaxy spread the ancestors of the living dead raging.
The fuck did you just say to me? You're a gluttonous orgy.
War against the Old Ones that had been the creators and protectors of the infant Eldari. They dominated the galaxy, and the Old Ones were totally besieged. Worse, the Catan had found an ever-plentiful source of sustenance, as the races that had been crafted and nurtured by the Old Ones now became like cattle for the hunger of the Catan. It is even said that amid this orgy of destruction, the Catan fought amongst themselves for their entertainment. Planets were razed, suns extinguished, and entire systems devoured by black holes via the reality-warping powers of the star gods. It is even suggested that as mortal races became more scarce, the gods would turn on one another until only a few remained. The Catan, seemingly somewhat preoccupied with their galactic war of destruction against everything and even themselves, were not paying as focused attention to the Old Ones as had been their assertion to the Silent King. And this lack of focus again raises the question of just if they had indeed fought a war against the Old Ones in the past, or was this just some kind of manipulation to ensure the Necron tier would provide them with the soul energy they needed to launch this galactic gorging?
I believe that they'd fought him. I believe that.
The Old Ones were by now desperate and needed a means to try and turn the situation around. For the longest time they had seeded life across the galaxy for the sake of creation, and they believed all life to be of value, yet now they did so with an urgent and necessary purpose.
Well, that's actually where I learnt about it. I obviously got mixed up with the Eldar and the Catan at the end, but like that's where I learnt of the story, was through TTS.
They would create many new life forms, but among the most important of these would be the Eldar, the Eldari. Despite the ongoing war in heaven, the Eldar would grow into a race with great potential over millennia.
Oh, I forgot to say, we did add 2 new mods to the mod team. I did mention that I was looking for mods a while ago, so can we say a big congratulations to both Sternly and Dan Cohen for making mod? We know that they will wear the badge with honour, and they'll be joining Alpaca in the mod team.
And not always under the watchful guidance of the Old Ones, who were forced into returning so as to continue fighting the war in heaven. These early Eldar would reach into the Immaterium, perhaps as was their nature, and which at this time was far more accessible, apparently overlapping with reality, not clearly separated as it is today. Their natural born talent enabled them to play and experiment with the warp, learning to use it in crafting their works and culture, which were of course glorious to behold. But these peaceful times would not last, as the first ones returned from the darkness beyond the sky, their strange and vast vessels scarred and worn. Their presence had dimmed from what the Eldar remembered. The Old Ones returned to inspect their Eldar creations. Were they ready to join the fight? When they discovered the Eldar's warp experimentation, they would encourage the Eldar to reach further into the Immaterium and discover ever more skill and creativity therein.
Great, now I've got to take Stern's orders. Well, I'll do it, but I'll be kicking and screaming. It's okay, you are always welcome, Stern. Riots can never be stopped. I've learned. I've come to the conclusion that I cannot prevent rioting in my communities. So, do with that what you will.
Now, here we interject with an important tangent. We leave our main historical timeline and put a pin in our place, where the Old Ones are now desperate and hopeful that their psychically powerful Eldar creations will be able to aid them. Because now we attempt to deal with the Eldar mythology, and what this all means. There are no truly definitive guidelines on the origins of the Eldar gods. However, we know that Asurion was the ruler of their pantheon. He is described as the embodiment of all psychic power in the universe, and it seems reasonable to position him as the first. Modern Eldari of the 41st millennium are often referred to as the Asuriani, or the Craftworld Eldar, as they are the descendants of Asurion. The Inari are the disciples of Enead. Now, firstly, much to the annoyance of all, some of the myths surrounding the war in heaven and the Eldar are deliberately contradictory, and that many of the tales and surrounding mythology, even with the best and most conscientious documenting and rationalising, leave us far from any concrete conclusions. It's also important to remember that most of this takes place 60 million years before the current age of the Imperium, and that even for the Eldar, the truth of these times is at this point distorted, overlapping, and simply very clouded.
I love that Stern has been a mod for a couple of minutes and has already threatened to ban people. Good job. Very good job.
What this means for us is that sometimes, even when there is a reference to something, it could even within the lore itself be mistaken or muddled and originally meant to reference something else entirely. So any and all of these references from this age, this mythological age, should be viewed with a lot of skepticism. Now, keeping this in mind, most often when people read about tales of Eldar mythology, they often, and to be fair, understandably, take them purely at face value.
Something power corrupts. Nosferatu, I am in America fairly regularly, so yeah, I'll come up to get the muffin.
And very literally. Most would assume, for example, that the Eldar gods, as described, were sentient walking entities, because they're spoken about in that way, much like how you might see an avatar of the Eldar in the modern 41st millennium, or say a demon prince or even a greater demon of chaos. So you get the general idea. Except that often, with any religion from millennia before, these tales and myths are often not meant to be taken literally. They may instead be an allegory, that is to say a story with another or a hidden meaning, perhaps more moral or simply an emotionally described history lesson for future generations. The very simplistic literal interpretation of the Eldar gods had been how I saw this all for a long time, because firstly the Eldar have seemingly always presented it as such, and secondly I never bothered to put a great deal of thought into it. Not to mention that one of the most difficult things about Eldar mythology is that it's fragmented all over the place across decades of books. So there's not a single account somewhere which just documents the whole thing. I always envisaged the gods as powerful, semi-sentient psychic weapons created by the Eldar because this is referenced and it fits well within the intentions of the Old Ones. Now that part of it is still entirely plausible, especially remembering that when the Old Ones came to creating the newer races like the Eldar and the Krork, they were desperate and backed into a corner. The Catan and the Necron had been decimating them, and the Old Ones, powerful as they were
something dark side. Something complete. Nice Family Guy reference.
seemingly not as powerful with the warp as their soon-to-blossom creations, the Eldar. The Old Ones were, I believe, well aware of the dangers this new race could represent, but when you're backed into a corner, often calm, rational and reasonable thinking goes out the window, and that seems to be what happened.
Quarks are the original version of the Orcs that weren't dumb.
The Old Ones essentially gambled that the Eldar would be their salvation. They had achieved either accidentally or deliberately in creating a race that had immense psychic power and sensitivity with the warp. And we have nowhere near enough information to know just how competent the Old Ones were when it came to creating a life. Were they just seeding planets almost at random and waiting to see what happened, or perhaps they had the knowledge to be able to craft specifically exactly the life that they wanted? Given how they're seemingly revered figures, I would lean in on them being very adept at this. But
any show that has done a Star Wars ripoff, I will know it. Because I'm obsessed with Star Wars. Lord of the Rings is still better, but still.
at the very least I would guess they had a level of competency in genetic manipulation. Regardless, on seeing the potential power held by this burgeoning race and then in realising this was just what they needed to vanquish the Catan, the Old Ones in their desperation encouraged the Eldar to develop their emergent warp skills, and to do this as fast as possible. And this is where things become even more unclear. It's very possible that the Eldar had created weapons from the warp that channeled and worked with their natural psychic ability. It's also possible that by working closely with the Eldar, some of the Old Ones who had more of an affinity with them came to be viewed as gods, or that the Eldar created entities that were beyond their comprehension during this time, forging entities on instinct rather than learned experience and knowledge, and then in so doing the Eldar perceived them not as their own creations.
That's sad. I understand hating by proxy, but let me just tell you, whoever that is not worth hating them for.
But as gods who had sprung forth from the warp to aid them. It is also possible that the Eldar collectively unintentionally created sentient beings with godlike qualities, but that these were reflective extensions of themselves. We know that the warp reflects the thoughts and collective feelings of mortal and psychically sensitive creatures, yet this is a point of contention because you remember that very common question about why are there no good gods in the warp? Why are there no positive chaos gods? Well, if the Eldar gods were created by the Eldar, this seems counterintuitive to our understanding of the warp manifesting negative traits. But the answer to this is fairly simple. The warp, in the 41st millennium, the age of the Imperium, is a hellscape that anything positive born into it would be immediately shredded, consumed or worse, before it knew what was what. Now,
am I dropping frames? She's lost the will to live. What's your degree in poetry? Sorry, bunch of hippies, for God's sake, don't use billions of dollars of medical equipment around us. Why don't we all get on our knees and pray? We don't have knees, you motherfuckers. I'm very much down to do the Star Wars Warhammer crossover. 100%. Very excited to do so. I already have the prerequisite knowledge on one side. But can you guys just confirm, because it says I'm dropping frames like a mother effer. And I'm not sure why. But I'd rather ask and be right than not. I'd be wrong than not ask and be right. Yes? So I had an issue with my internet service provider 3 days ago. They took my they literally stopped my internet because they were like, you didn't pay, and I was like, because you double charged me, because they had an error on their side where they double charged everyone. So I didn't pay the second one because obviously I wasn't gonna fucking pay twice. And they were like, you should have paid and then took the refund in like a week. Please let me know if that's okay. Are you sure? Okay.
Now, this also becomes problematic because we start dealing with the issues of time, but the evidence we have in terms of their mythology and what is talked about, you can assume that the warp was very different at that time. But this is really what I was talking about before in the first video, which is that we seemingly have linear descriptions of periods in time, yet in the warp there's supposed to be no time and all things can happen at any time, and so trying to reconcile those two things together and make sense of it all in any way is very difficult. So instead, you kind of have to say, well, we're just not going to worry too much about that, and we're going to look at what we have a documented linear timeline in terms of just history or mythological events, whatever it is. We're going to look at the information described there, and then from that, because it's something tangible, we're going to draw our conclusions.
Hell yeah.
So as I said, the warp in the 41st millennium is a hellscape. But if we were to see entities formed by positive and constructive attributes,
Let's
it's
go
likely that their
there.
consciousness would be entirely peaceful and positive. But it's precisely because of this that they're unable to even comprehend acts that we would see as being mildly negative or aggressive actions. They would essentially be extremely naive and ignorant of reality because they're formed from untainted goodness and purity. And this would surely lead to them then being brutally murdered without giving any resistance, which ultimately seems like it would be the case if anything good were to be born into the warp.
I've switched everything off on my PC except for the chat and the stream. So like hopefully it should. Is it really that bad? I've turned everything off. I've turned everything off.
In the 41st millennium. Anyway, why mention this at all? Well, because when the Eldar were at their earliest stages of development, the warp was seemingly a very different place than it is now. Not a nightmarish hell, but instead a peaceful, beautiful sea of psychic energy. And how do we know this? Well, for one, just by logical assumption, and the other are relative descriptions, because there are no descriptions in Eldar mythology during the...
Okay, I'm gonna end this poll and start a new one. Welcome in, Shock System. It seems good. Are you sure? I've closed everything. Like, be honest with me. Okay. What we talk? Did I watch the 10th edition cinematic yet? You guys will see that on Thursday. I will be. The patrons got that last Thursday. The non-patrons will get this on Thursday. You lost me for a second. Damn. Am I here? Am I live? I'm kind of concerned. You're fine for me? Like, I'm fine? You guys have got me a bit worried. I'm basically live. Okay.
The beginnings of their race of horrors consuming them or having to battle against untold entities, nor did they fear for their souls as the modern Eldar do for by now the well-established reasons of she who thirsts. There is nothing to suggest otherwise that I have seen, and the only descriptions of any dangers or predators in the warp come much later, toward the end of the War in Heaven, but not at all during this early period or even throughout the Eldar's establishment during the War in Heaven. So what we can conclude is that during this early emerging period for the Eldar, it's very possible that they were able to manifest either intentionally or not positive creations from the warp that represented powerful characteristics of themselves, and these were their gods, such as Asurian, Isha and Vor. Yet simultaneously they also brought forth gods like Cain, the god of war and destruction.
I am still live. I will state that for the record.
Except that Cain was not a being constructed from the darkest of dark desires. He was brutal, yes, but brought forth as a representation of the Eldar's need to express and feel the need for violence and war. Not necessarily as purely negative as it sounds, but more as most, if not all, mortal creatures can feel the need for self-preservation. And this feeling, this instinct, is, as we know, an extremely powerful one, a baser instinct that's lying there in you, waiting to be used. And that link, that technical description of how that functions is very critical. But of course for the Eldar with their powerful emotions, this was a much stronger feeling. And it's possible that some of the entities referred to the Eldar gods could have been or were at one time old ones. Perhaps they were old ones initially, but as the Eldar shifted their own perceptions, later these were reassigned. It's unlikely we'll ever know any of the specifics of these matters with certainty. There is, though, another idea tied to these fluid identities. And I would say that this was semi-speculative thinking, because it does have some logical references to the lore, but it's not explicitly stated. And this is the idea that the Eldar gods are in fact not gods at all. Not in the sense that's portrayed anyway. And they're nothing like the gods of chaos as combative literal entities. Nor are they the seemingly sentient anthropomorphized entities as described in Eldar mythology. The Eldar gods could represent something more akin to metaphorical aspects of the Eldar themselves, and the gods may have simply become figures to better enable the Eldar to retell the power of these cultural traits in their mythology.
But is he the Cain from Cain and Abel?
The gods may be representative of the Eldar's powerful psychic presence, as well as the significant force present in all of their emotions and ambitions. We can find evidence for this in the Rise of the Imari book Wild Rider. The simplest example to give would be the one people know best, the avatars of the god Cain. Now in the modern age, the Eldar god Cain does not exist as a whole entity, but instead shards of him are supposedly present in all Craftworlds. And commonly this is described where they sacrifice one of their exarchs who is given the title of the Young King. And this is in reference to an ancient Eldar known as Eldarnesh. The Young King will be taken to the
Eldarnesh. You know who he wants to be, right?
Avatar throne room on their craft world, although it has seemingly also happened on the battlefield, and after various ceremonies be apparently consumed by Cain with nothing left of their previous body. They then will walk forth as the avatar of the bloody-handed god, Kalamed Shakain. Now, in a sense, the most simple rationalization would be to say that those individuals are being consumed by the remnants of the entity Cain in order to bring him forth into mortal reality, much like demons are able to use a living host to breach reality from the warp. This thought process makes plenty of logical sense on the face of it. You could easily assume a similar process is happening here, except that, of course, I don't believe that's what's happening. The process of calling forth the avatar of Cain is not the same as what's occurring with chaos demons consuming mortals as a portal from the warp. And this is
Mortals as a portal. That's a rhyme.
Illustrated in Wild Rider when one of them calls forth the avatar as they are in battle. The description of once having trodden the path but holding back gives us the sense that it's not that they're channeling a god into their bodies as a vessel or being consumed completely, but this is something present in all Eldar, sitting behind their skin, present in their spirits, always fighting to get out. And that by letting go of their control over the true, raging psychic power in themselves, they allow it to become unleashed. And this is manifested as the Avatar Cain. And it is that psychic unleashing which ultimately consumes them.
The orc stomped, that's get good in my last wordy square. Let's go, Dagon. By the way, hello, Dagon.
Because Cain represents their rage and bloodlust, their desire for war and violence. It's their sense of having to fight for survival. It seems likely the reason only the most well-disciplined warriors are allowed to become an avatar would be because they are maybe the only ones able to keep it reasonably contained and in check and under control. For any others, once they unleash it, perhaps then it could not be contained, and as is commonly said, an Eldar who allows their emotions to run unconstrained will be ultimately destroyed by them. A description as follows from the Codex. When Eldar fight in battle, they divorce their mind from events around them, the spirit of Cain suffusing them. In this way, they're able to perform the horrific acts of violence that war necessitates, whilst keeping their minds free from its corruption. Eldar young kings allow themselves to be consumed by Cain, in a sense, but we're not seeing a god as you might envisage from a conventional understanding, so here's another short extract. More than once he had...
Isn't there an argument about whether he is or is not? Oh no, it's Khorne, isn't it? Khorne is either... Can someone just tell me for once, is Khorne a chaos god?
trodden that path, each time holding back the savagery and bloodlust that Kayla Menshakain had placed in him, learning what he could of war without succumbing to the lure of the bloody-handed one. Now the embodiment of Cain resided within him. He could no longer deny his nature. Head and heart warred with each other, but in the end, consensus was reached. The heart of Eldanesh kicked at his touch, welcoming and vital, and the Autarch felt the heat building beneath his fingers, and let go his last restraint, welcoming the rush of battle, hearing the din like martial drums, the heat becoming the fire of vengeance. From within, the flames of Cain burst free, immolating him with black and red. His distending figure grew thrice in size, plates of pitted iron replacing flesh and armour, boiling magma searing through him where his blood had run moments before.
I'm looking at sus user pins like Harley Peak. Thanks. The Avatar is one of those things that gets killed a lot to make other people look tougher, unfortunately. Ah, okay. Framed.
4. The hand upon his breast wept thick blood, the curse for Eldanesh's murder, while in his other his spear transformed into Anaris, the Kinslayer, infamous Widowmaker sword of myth. That which he had been faded, becoming just a part of the entity known as the War Shard, whose spirit he had assimilated in the Well of the Dead. He looked with the demigod's eyes at the scintillating play of energy that raged around him. Now it's important to note that Cain's avatar represents only a fragment of the original god Cain. It's difficult to fully envisage how such a figure would have been represented in the ancient times of the Eldar, but I'll expand on this later in the third video. Now, as I mentioned before, perhaps some of the gods themselves were physical entities to a degree, remembering the psychic weapons supposedly used in the war in heaven. And again,
It's Khorne, I can tell you all about it. Yes, Khorne is 100% Chaos God. Who was the dumb git that said he wasn't? Because there's only 4 Chaos Gods. Am I dumb? I'm sure someone said Khorne was maybe not one. I don't know.
as I just said, we'll look more closely at this after we look at the mythology itself.
They were like unofficial 5th Chaos God.
What to keep in mind is that just as the gods of chaos, or I should probably say the 3 gods of chaos, are the reflections of human mortality, the Eldar gods are themselves reflections of the extreme nature of the Eldar spirit, and they should not be thought of as being the same as the chaos gods, which are distinct separate entities within the realm of the warp. While undoubtedly the Eldar gods are from the warp, they are seemingly, or we might say were seemingly, not fully constrained to it as the chaos gods are. Another good example comes from the novel Path of the Warrior, and this gives us further insight to the details regarding the Eldar pantheon and their mythology. One reference though gives a very clear indication of how the Eldar gods may not represent literal entities, but instead could represent more like the cultural knowledge developed by the Eldar themselves, and this has a somewhat mystical appearance. Maybe even the Eldar now no longer understand much of it, not as severely, yet not entirely dissimilarly to the Dark Age of technology.
Cain is considered Khorne's child, but none of the Eldar gods are considered Chaos gods. Okay, I get you.
In the Imperium of Man in the 41st millennium.
Thank you.
Especially when you consider much of the Eldar's knowledge was gained and or developed
I'm just done.
over a
It's okay.
period of some 60 million years.
I was clearly thinking of someone else then. Clearly. Maybe I was thinking of Cain. But I'm sure someone said there was an unofficial 5th Chaos God.
Years.
I have been shamed.
You could forgive them for misplacing when and how they discovered certain achievements.
I am confusing it with malice.
It's reasonable that over time they had begun to attribute some of these more powerful cultural characteristics to their mythology. Now there is a passage which describes how Isha, the Eldar mother and god of life, had to give up a lock of her immortal hair so that Eldanesh, a great ancient hero of the Eldar, and all of his descendants could be healed by Isha's love for them. Now this in isolation just sounds like a piece of a mythological tale, except in Path of the Warrior it's actually referenced several times in direct regard to the Eldar's knowledge of healing. "You are in the care of Isha's healers," said the voice. Colandril could not tell if it was male or female, so softly spoken was the tone. "Nothing can harm you here. You're safe. You must heal. You must release the power from the tress of Isha." "The pain is too much," whispered Colandril. "The pain is not of your body, but of your spirit. The tress of Isha will free you from your pain. I am Surath, and I will help you. I have induced a paralysis for your own safety," Surath said. "The wound has bound but a little. You must help your body complete the healing process."
Corn! It has the juice! That little kid who's like, "I like corn." Yeah, I get you. Has anyone put that over a video of corn yet? Just like an avatar of corn. That would be good. It has the juice. You guys stop putting "it has the juice" in chat. People are gonna start thinking we're a bit weird.
You must draw on the tress of Isha. 20 more were in the halls of healing, some of them fighting with little hope against wounds even the tress of Isha could not heal. It seems that the tress of Isha, whilst described in the mythology, is also a very real thing, even in the modern Eldar civilization. So what was Isha? Was she a god, an old one? Was she perhaps some early Eldar who was dedicated to learning more of themselves, both in genetics and generally something that would be seen by humans as a great scientist? It's impossible to say, but as some Eldar have exclaimed, maybe in another million years, they may be talked about as if they were gods. So the sense of such things is not even lost on the Eldar themselves. It's also possible that the Eldar have even forgotten how they originally manifested the other gods, and this thinking not only allows us to look at the Eldar and their mythology in a different way, but it also more importantly enables us to look at the Chaos gods in the Warp in a different way, helping us to reach further conclusions later with them as well.
Cornflakes is a popular joke. That's a good joke, but I still think someone should put the soundbite of that kid over pictures of corn. I'm just saying.
As I said in the first video, whether you're looking at everything as having a process of cause and effect, and despite lacking the constraints of the mortal realm, like it or not, the warp is tethered to our reality. So consequently, however you might want to try and cut it, there are some things that even in the warp, with its lack of time and causality, cannot be avoided or changed. Yvraine of the Inari has this realization multiple times throughout the course of her journey to unleash Enead. With a sudden sense of profound realization, Yvraine saw the pattern within, the cycle of the Eldari that she sought to turn full circle. Enead was not simply the spirits of the Eldari, the sum of the reborn given life. She was the full incarnation of the Maiden, the Mother, and Crone. Enead was Lilith, granter of visions, Isha, birth giver to the Eldari, and Morai Heg, holder of fate. She stood reeling while the power of the revelation coursed through her. It made glorious and yet terrifying sense. Do the gods not also have souls? When the great enemy attempted to devour its Eldari creators, not all were consumed. Segorak escaped. Cain was shattered into the avatars of the bloody-handed. Other fragments might have survived. A piece.
I'm gonna ignore the iconography comment. If you want to be pedantic, any god is effectively the same thing. Like Cain and Corn are made and react like any other god. But if you say Chaos God, you're only talking about the four. Okay.
Piece or pieces of every god scattered throughout the Eldari, born again and again into mortal form, just as the souls of the Eldari themselves. She almost fainted with the weight of understanding. Yvraine resolved that the revelation was true, but that she could not yet reveal the purpose to others. They seemed ignorant of their own divine heritage, and perhaps for good reason. The myths of the gods were full of deceit, infighting, and treachery. Better that none of them harboured a higher ambition than the service of Enead. Before we turn to the mythology itself, that mention here of infighting and treachery, and there isn't a great deal mentioned of it, but as we learn about the early period of the Eldar and the War in Heaven, you'll see that there was more going on here than just mythological figures acting out cultural tales for the sake of history. In fact, it seems with a strong degree of certainty that there was some form of civil war which occurred among the Eldar themselves during this time. In many Eldar tales there are often references to hawks, falcons and other birds, and it seems these may refer to early factions of Eldar pre-War in Heaven, not dissimilarly to the differing Craftworld, Exodite and Harlequin Eldar in modern age. Factions essentially representative of different sections in the Eldar civilization, maybe with different views, different outlooks. And this is why we also have a sense that the War in Heaven refers collectively to the whole period of these times, one of unending war. Perhaps things became so muddled and clouded, or simply so much time just passed by that things have become unclear that it was just easier to refer to the whole period as one war, or that after a certain point it was not really relevant what it was called, and the classic phrase of having been fighting for so long that they'd forgotten why they were fighting comes to mind.
Mind you, Eldar lore is bad because they are ponce gifts with a stick up their collective butts and prefer to squish them than learn about them, unless it's to learn how to squish them better. Well, maybe you'll learn something from all of this and a way to squish them better.
And so the whole thing becomes eventually known as the War in Heaven. If the Eldar did have a civil war at some point, as seems to be the case, this could have been a result of some simple internal disagreement, as unsurprisingly most civil wars are. The true origins of this could involve a variety of factors. Perhaps some Eldar felt that they must honour and stand with the old ones, while others felt that this was not their war to fight. Who knows, maybe some felt that they should be worshipped as gods, others not. Maybe this could explain for very practical reasons why these developed into these grand mythological tales. Regardless of any such speculation, the truth will likely never be known. As we now look into Eldar mythology, you'll see how, as I've said, the signs that point toward an internal Eldar conflict occurring toward the beginning of and during the War in Heaven. It is important to note that there are various versions of some details which overlap and contradict, and there are also no specific time periods whatsoever attributed, which will give us an idea of when these things may have begun or ended. There's nothing which signifies this. And with this in mind, I have attempted to combine the various mythological events into a more coherent timeline that makes sense to me. And there are no real subjective elements here. That is to say, I have added very little of my own rationalization or speculation. I have simply arranged all the established reference that I was able to find, albeit often very fragmented references. So, let's build this picture.
Like how the avatar of Cain, the demonettes Slanesh and Celestine are all functional demons. Gonna find from the Inquisition now. Do you want to start getting ideas for the next topic? What are you guys thinking? What do you guys want to do next? Do you have any ideas? Let's riff a little. Chaos gods by the nature of creation are chaotic. Psychic accidents made of emotional refuse, if you will. Whatever the Eldar gods are, it's not that. That's fair. To be fair, Slanesh was born by pure... Well, we all know what she was made from. Sucks to lose endlessly in the law, even in their own books. Curse you, Yunari books.
All things have a beginning. And for the Webway, that beginning took place at the Well of Harmonies. Some legends claim that this world was where Eldanesh first sired the Eldar people, and where Cain cast down his bloody spear to create the War in Heaven. There are some philosophers who say the Well of Harmonies never existed, except as a metaphor, for everything is a cycle and begins nowhere, never ending. Whether there was once a single place from which sprang the existence of the Eldar Empire, ever it was that they were to be reborn again and again, every subsequent generation knowing tragedy. In the times before the War in Heaven, even before the Eldar, it is said that the gods schemed, planned, and engaged in games between one another.
I don't know, you look at what Cain does and what Khorne does, that line gets blurry. The Eldar are generally... Oh yeah, I already read that one. Sorry.
Lord of the Hunt was the lover of Lilith of the Moon, and they enjoyed the blessings of Asurian and the friendship of other gods, except that of Cain, for he desired Lilith for himself, not for her beauty, but solely because Cernus had him for himself. He tried to impress Lilith, his crude efforts were never anything that could best that of Cernus, and he became consumed with the desire to possess her. Cain demanded Lilith from Asurian. He told Cain she would not be taken back.
I just wanted a drink and I messed up. Yo, Marshmallow, how we doing? I don't mean the Eldar are bad, I just don't like them. That's fair.
Force that if he could not win her heart, then he could not have her.
Oh, the
Cain was
techno
consumed
train.
with rage and swore that if he could not possess her, then no one would. Taking his sword, he carved into the void. Taking Lilith, he cast her into the void, where no light could shine for 1,000 days. The heavens were dark, until Cernus, brave and resourceful, dared the rift, and rescued Lilith so that her light would return. When the Eldar first rose, it is said that they were nourished by the tears of Isha. Azurian would give them wisdom to know themselves. Isha gave them love to know one another. Vol gifted them artifice to enable the crafting of their dreams. Lilith, goddess of dreams and fortune, gave them joy to know happiness. Cernus
You can't support the Imperium right now. We're so anti-Imperium, we've gone like the other way.
gave them
We've got
desire
Xenos.
for them to know prosperity. Morai Heg, the crone, bestowed them with foresight that they should know their place in the world. And Cain gave them anger to protect all that the gods had given to them. During the earliest days of the Eldar, the Surian granted Eldanesh life, yet their world was barren and devoid of life. Seeing Eldanesh so saddened by the desolate nature of their home, Isha, mother of life and harvest, sharing his grief, shed a tear upon the Eldar's world. Her sorrow brought joy, and it filled the world with beauty and life, and Eldanesh felt no more sadness and gave thanks to Isha for what she had gifted the Eldar. The myth, known by the Eldar as the Tears of Isha, recalls how the Eldar race was born as the mortal children of Isha and Cernus. Lilith dreamed that Cain would be torn into 100 pieces by a great mortal army. And when the god of war Cain learned of this, he resolved to destroy the Eldar. Knowing this, Isha wept. Azurian heard the weeping of Isha and learned of Lilith's dream and of Cain's plan. In order to save the Eldar, Azurian would divide the two realms, placing between them a barrier separating gods and mortals for it.
Thank you, Marshmallow. Exactly Nosferatu. Imperium. Ugh. Eldar, a base, just don't get the Love Angel magic touch from Game Workshop. Ooh. Yo, Wolfman! We are talking about the space elves. Bloody knife ears, it's true.
Eternity.
I'll throw this in again. Mistakes of the Liam, it's on Tuesday for Patreons, Thursday for non-Patreons. I got you. Next Tuesday for non-Patreons. It's already in the works. This Tuesday for Patreons, next Tuesday for non-Patreons. Okay? You don't need to throw it in anymore. I've done it. Okay? I've done it. No, have a ride or die Imperium stand. I'll purge you all for heresy later though. Alright, fine. Do it later though. We're in the middle of something.
Isha now only wept all the more because her mortal children had been separated from her, and so she and Cernus pleaded with Vol the Smith to help them. Vol knew Azurian would never change his mind, but his heart was softened by Isha's pleas. Vol would craft the first spirit stones to enable Isha to still see and talk to her mortal children. Isha and Cernus taught the Eldar much of this knowledge, until one day Cain overheard Isha as she spoke to her children. Information he would immediately convey to Azurian, who was enraged that his commands had been disobeyed. The crone goddess Morai Heg sought to partake of the wisdom contained in her divine blood. Knowing there was only one with the power to harm a god, she sent her daughters to haunt their father Cain's steps with their piercing screams. The infernal noise drove Cain into a bloody rage that saw his mind begin to unravel. Promising an end to this curse, the crone goddess bade Cain cut off her hand that she might drink deep from her own veins. With this deed, Morai Heg gained the knowledge of blood, and the aspect of the Banshee was granted to Cain in return. Azurian told Cain that as Isha and Cernus had betrayed him, he now considered them unworthy of his protection. Cain quickly made Isha and Cernus his prisoners, and they were submitted to the fiery torments of Cain's confinement for many years. Bound by
What did you redact? I love the old man, he's great. It's true. Lionel Johnson is back. Oh, you missed this. Wolfbane. Thursday is the... it's already out on Patreon, but Thursday is the Lionel Johnson reaction. It's getting uploaded on Thursday for you guys. It's already on Patreon for those last week. You just left the stream and came back? Well, welcome back, Nosferatu. What happens when you badmouth the Imperium? The Inquisition cuts your internet. Damn. Wait, am I gone again? Am I here? Hey, Florin! Am I here? Oh, well, Fane, go on. What's the news? I'm very excited. Giz news. I would like news, please. You had to restart stream? Fuck. I'm sorry. I'm still here, I promise. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere, I swear. I swear. Well, I am still here.
By bonds of flame and scorching iron, the god and goddess were cast into a burning pit out of the sight of both mortals and gods alike. Of all the gods, only Vol would plead with Cain on their behalf. Eventually, he managed to strike a bargain and swore an oath to Cain that he would make 100 of the very finest swords in exchange for their release. Even a single blade forged by his hand was of inconceivable value. When the time came for Vol to deliver his weapons, he still had one unfinished blade, and to conceal the shortfall, Vol took an ordinary mortal blade and mixed it amongst the other masterworks. The reasons for this are unclear, as to whether this was part of an intentional deceit to create a weakness in Cain, or if Vol merely wanted to be sure to complete his oath on schedule for Cain. At first, Cain failed to spot the deception, and only later when Isha, Kurnus and Vol were far away did he discover the forgery. Cain roared with anger, called out to Vol as a cheat, and swore that he would have vengeance. This was the beginning of the long struggle between Cain and Vol, the war in heaven. Vol would now forge a great blade, the final sword that he had failed to finish to settle his debt with Cain.
The Wi-Fi can't handle the love of Slaanesh. Slaanesh is just calling me back. It's just interacting with my internet service provider and being like, yo, hey girl, hello, can you hear me? And she'd be all like,
Bender, honey, we love you.
Shut up, baby, I know it.
and I'm all like, you know, shut up baby, I know it. So that's how it is.
It was vastly more powerful than any that had come before it, for as he had imbued the weapon with all the art of his mastery, he called it Anaris, meaning light of dawn, and with this sword in hand he strode out to do battle with the war god. The fight was long and Vol caused grievous wounds to his nemesis, but in the end, Cain overpowered the smith god, toppling him out of heaven. It was as a result of this confrontation that Vol is said to have suffered the injuries that left him crippled, Cain shackling Vol to his anvil with chains of iron wrought by the smith god himself. Anaris eventually passed into the hands of the mortal hero, Eldanesh. Hawk and Falcon, both messengers of the gods, were close friends and loved to compete and challenge one another. One day in a test, to see who could snatch their prey first, they swooped down upon it. Hawk was faster at first, but Falcon beat his wings the harder and dove ahead. Not willing to give up the victory, Hawk surged on, cutting in front of Falcon. Annoyed by his friend's maneuver, Falcon batted a wing against Hawk's tail, sending his rival off course. Hawk returned quickly, flying into Falcon to slow down his dive. Then their wings became entangled and the two of them fell out of the skies. Their prey flew away, laughing merrily, and the both of them went hungry that night. Before the time of the war in heaven, Lord of the Eldar, Hawkfriend, lived Eldanesh, greatest warrior of the Eldar. He was their sworn defender, yet knew he could not bear this burden alone, and so he would reach out to Ulthanesh, the second greatest warrior of the Eldar. The friends fought side by side, and none could stand against them. Yet their ambitions were also at odds with one another, and Eldanesh would not
all the Eldar, everyone is gonna raid Slanesh's place. I'm a bender, you know, kind of. To be fair, the real reason I don't like these knife ears is the stupid arrogance gets to me. Oh, you think the Emperor's bad? Oh boy, let me tell you about the entire Eldar race. Listen, everyone's terrible in this place. Everyone, without fail. So, I'm not going to judge them any more harshly than I judge everyone else.
Entertain any such discussions, and so would banish his friend Ulthanesh, who was sent out to walk the desert. Weary, Ulthanesh would rest upon a rock, where he would sit and consider the wrongs of the universe and the dishonour put upon him. Cain saw the distress of Ulthanesh and saw an opportunity. He broke the tip of one of his fingers and cast it into the shadow of the rock. It became a scorpion and would sting Ulthanesh, the poison consuming him as he writhed in agony for days. Ulthanesh was strong, and he resisted the fever and pain of the poison and found himself suddenly at peace. He had survived.
It's not about what they do, it's about how they fundamental type of entity being a different one. That's fair.
And had not needed Eldanesh to do so. This brought to Ulthanesh the realization that he did not require Eldanesh's protection, that he was strong in himself and he could stand on his own. Thus, the House of Ulthanesh was founded and the strife of the Eldar began. A consort of the Great Hawk would retrieve Vol's mighty sword, allowing it to pass into the hands of the mortal hero Eldanesh. Eldanesh had previously feared in battle not for himself, but for the lives of his warriors, and it was in this doubt and fear that Cain would arrive on the battlefield. Fire-blooded, spear and shield in hand, the two shared no love, but Cain would protect the Eldar from their enemy. Eldanesh's fear was quashed by the presence of Cain, and the Eldar would know victory over their foes. With Cain now at his side and Anaris in hand, none could stand against Eldanesh and the might of the War God. Cain would congratulate Eldanesh on his victories and promised that there would be many more. Cain granted Eldanesh a vision by releasing a drop of his fiery blood upon Eldanesh's forehead. And the vision showed him a future where the enemies of the Eldar were slain in great numbers and the power of the Eldar grew beyond imagination. All would bow before the strength and greatness of Eldanesh and give thanks for his leadership. After this vision, Cain explained to Eldanesh that he would put aside his animosity toward the children of Isha if Eldanesh would swear loyalty to Cain himself.
Everyone sucks, and that's why I love 40k. Iscariot, welcome in. You know what? That's a very popular opinion. I can't deny it. It's an opinion a lot of people have. I really like the Eldar, like a combo of a bunch of our specifically Greek, Egyptian, and Celtic. I don't disagree. However, have y'all met Slanesh?
But Eldanesh had no care for the future drowned in
And Eldanesh is such a Slanesh name ripoff.
blood that Cain had shown to him and refused his loyalty test. In an instance of pure rage, Cain would roar as he struck down Eldanesh, and the war in heaven began.
We can make some war.
It is said that the followers of Eldanesh caught his spilling blood in 7 cups to keep it safe from the war god. Cain fought to reclaim the life and spirit of his victim, but Eldanesh's people had held the war god's armies at bay, preserving Eldanesh's spirit forever.
Yeah, but Slanesh wears it better, so it's hers. Chet rat law, let's go.
Around the Eldar homeworld, 3 moons orbited: Leleath the Maiden, Kurnos the Hunter, and Eldanesh, who was set into the sky as a constant reminder of his bloody death. This red moon is said to be a symbol of bad fortune, and even if an Eldar of the current age...
Like, Stanley, you're probably correct, but I'm still going to say it. True, but my point was what makes their essence, how they feed, what dictates their behaviour, what hurts them, follows the same lines. Okay, I get you. I thirst for hot people, so do I, that's why I like Slanesh.
To see the vision of a red moon, it is perceived as a bad omen, a sign of impending disaster. In the moment between Cain's blade landing upon Eldanesh and his death, Azurian, the Phoenix King, Lord of the Eldar gods, came down from heaven, and Eldanesh asked why it was that the Eldar had to die. Azurian would laugh. He would tell Eldanesh that he could not die.
You can't own grammar! Not even as horny as personified. Not gonna lie, if I had to choose one of the 4, Slanesh is the last one I'd choose. Why? Well, What's wrong with my girl Slanesh? Do you not like her? Don't talk about grammar here. Oh my god, I'm not going to get into this. I'm not going to get into pronunciations again. I'm not going to say it. True and based? How dare you all? I'm an Emperor's child.
The father of the Eldar would live on in the spirit and memory of his children, reborn anew in every generation. As they prospered, he would be immortal. As death gripped Eldanesh, Asurion gave him one final message. The gods had no descendants. Only they could truly die. Asurion, though, was so appalled by the murder of Eldanesh that he cursed the war god, so that ever after he was known as Kala Mensha Cain. Cain, the bloody-handed god. At the dawn of the war in heaven, Asurion asked the crone goddess Morai Heg what would be the fate of the gods. She would look to the future and discern what would become of the gods. Long she would follow overlapping threads, following each on its course until the end of the universe, and yet she could find no answer for the Lord of Lords. All paths took her into a place of fire and death, where she could venture no further. To find the answer, she followed Cain the bloody-handed, who was seen to wage war on the other gods and mortals.
The last? Nah, fam, can't agree with that exactly. Khorne wouldn't stoop to underhanded tactics like creeping scorpions. You know who would? Zinj. The time has come. The time is now. Slanesh is getting raided and Gilliman is going to be there with the lion and the last layer of laid. Slanesh days are numbered. No, they're not! Fuck you! Shut up!
She took from him a thimbleful of his blood. Returning, she set the blood of the war god upon her balance, and on the other side of her scales, she coiled the thread of fate belonging to Eldanesh. All was equal.
Apparently Horus was supposed to become Slanesh equivalent for humanity by the end of the heresy. But, you know, Primarchs and their inheriting of the Emperor's inability to get the job done. Right, listen. I'm going to need you to tell me how to say your name. But Iscariot, you sound like my kind of person. The Emperor's inability to get the job done. Agreed. I don't like torture and body horror, and Celeste is just the god of that. Rather be a cornerlight and die in a rage-filled combat than be turned into a living harpsichord. A living harpsichord sounds useful. At least you'd be useful in death.
Morai Heg returned to Asurion and told him that the fate of the gods was not his to know. The mortal Eldanesh.
Also, Dagon, are you the one who made the comment that made me indignant the other day? I believe you might be. I'm going to go check. Because I'm going to draw attention to this. One of y'all called me a psychopath in the comments during my last video. I'm going to find it. I'm going to find the comment. Yeah, it was you, Dagon. I fucking knew it. You called me a psychopath. How dare you? At least you'd be useful even if you're not dead. But you called me a psychopath the other day because I didn't consider taste testers. Because I didn't consider them working as taste testers. During my last video. I read the comments. I read all of your comment. So Dagon, if you think I don't read your entire comment, no matter how long it is, I do. I do. And I went home and told everyone about that comment. I was like, can you believe someone just called me a psychopath in my own comments? That's how I feel.
And his people would decide if the gods survived
You're
or
a
not.
hoser.
As Cain continued to unleash his rage upon the Eldar, Ulthanesh refused to fight, claiming that this was an issue for the House of Eldanesh, not with all Eldar. Cain's wrath, though, was not so confined, and there were those in the House of Eldanesh who remembered well the bitter parting with Ulthanesh. Those tainted by Cain fell upon Ulthanesh's followers, and there was a great war between the houses. Cain saw his work, and he was pleased. Ulthanesh finally relented and decided it was time for himself to enter the battle spear in hand, yet not to wage war upon the house of Eldanesh.
Very Tzeentch behaviour, by the way. Well, you're the one who's going form immunity to poison. Right, to I'm a poison, a sweet roll. No bans needed. Am I being accused of being a Tzeentch spy? How dare you accuse me of being a Tzeentch spy? I'm Slaanesh till I die. And listen, immunity from poison directly leads into using that to poison people. It's just... How can I explain? It's just a very clear progression. If you can tell things are toxic and survive it, you can eat it, share it, and kill someone. It's not my fault if I just have better ways of killing.
No, his grievance was with Cain. Seeing that her children would forever be divided, the goddess Isha gave thanks to mighty Asurion, the All-Seeing, and asked that he part the torrent and allow the folk of Eldanesh and the folk of Ulthanesh to once more come together. Asurion could not bring himself to intervene to such a degree, but he would pass a cooling breath to still the waters of division. This would freeze the rapids between the two and allow them to cross over. At times this would thaw and divide them again, but it would also freeze and unite them. This winter gulf could serve to create a union or a barrier between the two. Upon seeing their common enemy, the House of Eldanesh made peace with those of Ulthanesh, and they fought together as the warriors of old. There were those, however, who were by now so consumed with the passion of war that they would slay any foe, regardless of their house. They became creatures of the bloody-handed god, turned now against their own kind. As the war in heaven raged on, Cain and his followers slew ever more Eldar of the two houses. Mother Isha feared the Eldar might be exterminated, and so she went before Asurion and begged for his intervention. Asurion also feared that Cain's unrelenting rage would destroy not only the Eldar, but the gods themselves.
Sounds like a Nurgle tactic. She's secretly Alpha Legion! I'm toxic, kind of. Murmur. You might make some people believe that. Or you can punch a puny mortal in the face with your superhuman strength and walk out the front door like a proper Chad. I'm just saying, why can't I do both? What happens if you have to kill your friends? Why did I see you with Magnus last night? Because he's a demon prince. And I'm into that. Toxicity is an indication of Nurgle's influence. I wouldn't say that I'm under Nurgle's influence. Are you guys speculating if I've been corrupted by another Chaos God? How dare you? I'm gonna go pink. I'm gonna go pink for this. I'm gonna go purple for this moment. I feel like this speech will not be correct without pink. Well, purpley pink. Listen here. I have been Slaanesh from the moment I knew she existed. I am not chaos undivided. I am chaos divided. I am a Slaanesh fan. I only follow Slaanesh. I will only ever follow Slaanesh. Whilst I may accept that other chaos gods have their benefits, it doesn't mean that I undo the one true chaos god, the girl, guy, creature that has my soul. Slaanesh. Khorne and Khornite followers are boring. Die, oh my wow. Well, they do corrupt each other's followers. In Fidelity First Millennium, Slaanesh follows you. Sounds like something a smile would say!
He agreed to aid Isha in her request, but that he required a lock of her immortal hair. This he bound into the hair of Eldanesh, that all of his descendants could be healed by Isha's love for them. When the war in heaven was at its height, the followers of Cain were the greatest enemy of both houses, for they had been consumed by their bloodlust and had given in to the whispers and promises of Cain. Yet one by one they fell. Cain would not relinquish them so easily. Instead, he would arm them so that they may continue the battles. Yet still they were defeated, until eventually Vol, the smith god, refused to forge any more supplies for the armies of Cain. Despite Cain's threats and tortures, Vol would not comply. Cain still would not release the spirits of those who had sworn their loyalty to him, so he would instead crush them together in his iron fist so that the many would fight as one. Filled with the coursing wrath of Cain in their blood, the spirit...
I completely agree. Undivided is cringe. Pick a side! I saw it with Magnus and praying to Zeech. You did not see me praying to Zeech. I would never, ever pray to that specky little freak. Only follow Slaanesh. That's exactly what a Siege Spy would say. Oh my god. Black Legion. No!
Spirit warriors of the bloody-handed god slaughtered many children of Eldanesh and Ulthanesh, yet there came such anger in them that these spirits now fell even to fighting among themselves. Each spirit vied for control of the whole, and they splintered. Cain's spirit army fell to ruin as they finally fled his grip. The war in heaven was over, with Asurion never having taken a side, instead looking on impassively. But he said that in doing so, he wisely remained the Lord of all. The fall of the Eldar itself is already widely known, and we'll look at this in more detail later. But for our purposes of the gods and the mythology, it's enough to say that millions of years later, the great enemy of the Eldar race would be born violently into existence. Morag would be the first of the Eldar gods to be consumed by She Who Thirsts, as would Lilith and Asurion, seemingly destroyed as well. Cain though would bring his rage to She Who Thirsts, but such was Slaanesh's uncontestable strength.
Alright, listen, Leo. We both know, that against the Imperium is technically a side, but that's not the side we're asking you to pick, because that side could involve so many, including the Eldar, including the Necron, including even the Tyranids is technically against the Imperium because they're against all of humanity. So you like eating Eldar? You know it. So what I'm saying is, ooh, sexy lady, do. Open Slaanesh style. Where are all the sexy man arts? They're the same ones. Slaanesh got that body in a dick. I thought you knew this. I think that's Paterbo's side. True. No one wants to see it!
He was quickly overpowered. Slaanesh and then Khorne would fight for possession of Cain's spirit, but he belonged to neither of them, and as they both wrestled for control of Cain...
Thorin, that was a great comment. Tyranids are not against anyone. They love all, as I love pizza. Me too. What's your favourite pizza topping?
Ultimately, the bloody-handed god would fall from heaven into the world of the mortals, shattering into fragments, no longer able to exist as one whole. Cain now awaits the call to battle when blood awakens him, and his desire for vengeance and war called forth from the infinity circuits of Eldar Craftworld. All of this was too much for Isha, who wept and cried out in despair at the horror unfolding. Before Slaanesh could consume her, Nurgle, the Lord of Despair, would hear her calls and stole her out of the gaping maw.
I'd eat Eldar, if you know what I mean. Oh, pineapple? Disgusting.
Of destruction, only to
Back in
descend
your
into
box
new
or calling the
hellish fate.
commissar.
For Isha would find herself caged
Am I not the commissar right now? Am I the emperor? No.
within the chambers of Nurgle, where she as the god of life and healing is forced to taste all the poisons and corruptions that Nurgle designs. Dependent on Isha's reactions, Nurgle may rain them down upon the mortal realm, seeding worlds with plague and corruption, or vomit them back into his cauldron of blight. Some say Isha still whispers into the mortal realm to aid where she can, gifting mortals with the cures to heal and save them from the plagues and physical horrors of Grandfather Nurgle. Segarach, the Laughing God, it is said evaded the clutches of Slaanesh and escaped into the webway, where he remains as the master of the Eldar Harlequins.
I like the Harlequins. They're pretty cool. They're kind of a vibe. I never left my box, there were people outside. What am I even bonked for? Bazinga! Voldemort likes pineapple pizza. He's just gone down in my estimations.
And there it would all end, were it not for the Inari. Aeneid is another god of the Eldar, who the Inari believe are meant to save all the souls of the Eldar. It is said that this can only occur when all the Eldar meet their final reckoning, and in that process, Aeneid will rise to destroy Slaanesh and finally enable the Eldar to once again be reborn. Aeneid promises that even after the last Eldar have died, they will become the reborn, a terrifying sacrifice for a race still coming to terms with their mortality in many ways, but through this they would gain spiritual salvation and freedom from Slaanesh. The Inari are attempting to bring Aeneid into existence, but doing so without all of the Eldar having to die. They are looking for the 5 crone swords to try and bring forth Aeneid. Moriheg gave up her hand to Cain so that she might drink her own blood and know her fate. From those finger bones, Vol would craft the crone swords. As M41 would come toward its close, Vrain had only found 4 of the 5 crone swords, and Aeneid was only partially awakened. Yet the very
Pineapple pizza is heresy, I agree. The coolest Eldar god, murder clowns. I like murder clowns. Hilarious hearing him swear though. True.
evident power of Aeneid was demonstrated when Ivrain managed to call the avatar of Aeneid, which proved that their beliefs were not crazy imaginings, but a very real and tangible goal. This has led to the followers of Aeneid, the Inari, continuing to grow in numbers and strength from the end of the 41st millennium. The Inari, though, may have other issues beyond Slaanesh and the need to try and bring more Eldar on board with their goals. Cultural conflict for one. Because the Inari accept Dark Eldar, Craftworld, Exodites, Corsairs and Harlequins, they essentially accept any Eldar into their group. How the differences between all of those groups and the various ways they've learned to live and fight and evade Slaanesh will have to be resolved. What kinds of fractured groups and problems that could create are unknown. And another unknown is just what the future holds for the Inari. While they have had so far some debatable initial success, it's unlikely things will be smooth sailing. It's difficult to know if they have really achieved positive gains in the grand scheme of things, or have simply furthered the already very fractured Eldari more than they already were. The only major achievement was to shine for once a very real and very visible ray of hope.
Yeah, Voldemort swearing throws you right off. True. Don't dunk on other people's taste buds. Like, I'm not dunking, I'm just saying pineapple. They'll go to Rome and say that'll pay for your coffee. I'm never not entertained watching your streams. Nosferatu, that means the world to me. Dan Cohen, loading bolt pistol. We should take them out. We should take out all pineapple. What if pineapple just didn't exist anymore? Slaanesh is gonna die. Slaanesh is not about to die. I will kill you, Dagon!
Now I should note that while it's still
Sorry. Wolfbane. I thought I confused you and Dagon. Dagon, I won't kill you right now. Maybe later, unsure why. You did call me a psychopath. Wolfbane, you're on my hit list though!
widely talked about. The only actual reference I could find which talks about this struggle between Khorne and Slaanesh over Cain is from 1st edition, so feel free to view that with skepticism. Where there are contradictions though are related to the order and events of Cain and Eldanesh. The following description is a transcribed imperial witness to an Eldari Harlequin dance. There was a time when the Eldar were not racked by fear and did not live their lives in mortal apprehension of the dark fate that awaited them upon death. A warrior could meet foes without a thought for his mortal shell. His soul would live on, reborn as a phoenix from the flame. In that manner did the Eldar join their gods to wage war against the Ungir, the Catan, the immortal starspawn that plagued the universe with their eternal thirst and undying warriors. Their minions, the silvered host, parted like a sea before Cain's wrath, and his followers, the most battle-hardened of all, blazed a flaming path across the galaxy. Ulthanesh and Eldanesh, noble kings of their houses, fought at Cain's side. Lanthrulak the Swift and Jurelia, thrice blessed, led their peoples, and none could stand before them. Then came Kaelus Ra, the Deathbringer. Its rampage stained the stars with blood, and none could stand against it, for it wielded the power of death itself. Populations fell before.
You called me a psychopath, Dagon. Oh, you called me crazy. That's not bad. As a disciple of Slaanesh, you should realise there's no such thing as a bad sensory experience, hence the pineapple. Have you ever had pineapple on pizza? First Unari, every successful revolutionary moment was a coalition of multiple groups, at least at first. True. Can't kill me because I'm Alpha Legion. I can be anyone in the chat. We are all Wolfbane. Well, you disguised yourself as Dagon for a moment. You still call me crazy, though.
Its scythe, its very gaze killed even the greatest of Eldar heroes. Those that died lost everything, even their souls. But the gods of the Eldar had strengths other than force of arms. The greatest among the soul dancers had begun to convince the Catan to turn their hunger inward, to consume their brethren in unholy feasts of starflesh. Kalis Ra took its blade to its kin and butchered them without mercy, as it had the sons of Isha. While the Deathbringer sought ever darker ways to slake its unquenchable thirst, Cain was not idle. He struck a bargain with Vol the Smith God in exchange for Kronos and Isha's release from Cain's dungeon. Vol would forge 100 swords for Cain's war against the Ingir. Thus were born the swords of Vol, the Blade Wraiths. Cain led his people to war once more, his rage incandescent, the remnants of his army aflame with the heat of vengeance. 100 Eldar, each armed with a Blade Wraith, faced a horde of silvered Necron tier, so vast the horizon glittered with metal bodies in every direction. Yet they knew no dread. The Eldar fought in a great circle, the swords of Vol flashing, and the Necron tier could not penetrate their defence. The soul might contained within the swords invigorated their wielders.
God, I remember owning a first edition rulebook. Yo, Liam. Can I see it? A veteran fan if you were here from first edition. Wait, I want to see the book. I like books.
And every blow smashed apart an unholy foe. Cain was unstoppable, and his warriors fought with the knowledge that their god was pleased. The battle lasted 7 days and 7 nights before the Eldar began to fall. The Catan's servants had found a weak spot in the circle. Lanthrolak the Swift was tiring, his face pale, his imperfect sword dull and blunt. The ring of warriors buckled and broke, and the ground shook as Cain bellowed his anger. Vol had cheated him. One of the swords was lifeless. From the ground beneath them burst Kalis Ra, the Nightbringer, and the Eldar fell back, for they knew their doom was at hand. With a gesture, Kalis Ra slew all those near it. With a glance, it condemned the souls of great warriors to an eternity of dust. With a great roar, Cain levelled his spear and charged. Scythe and spear clashed over a mound of corpses in a struggle that tore the skies asunder. Cain's speed and skill were breathtaking, but the Nightbringer was a being of shadow. The spear of Cain could not find its mark. Kalis Ra let its foe exhaust his rage with the patience of death. Without warning, the Nightbringer swung mightily with his scythe and aimed for Cain's throat, but Cain had heeded the counsel of the Laughing God well, and as the Nightbringer's form became solid to deliver its blow, Cain lunged, and the tip of his spear drove clean through the Catan chest. Kalis Ra burst apart in an explosion of silvered shards that nearly cleft Cain in two as the Catan essence tore free of physical form.
I was only a kid at the time, sadly the book is long gone. Water damage to the shed, if I remember it right. That's upsetting. But if you do ever find it, even water damage, let me see. Then again, orcs used to use bolters.
The silvered warriors around him
Orcs
fell
use
to the
anything
earth
they can
as the
find.
impact spread ever outward, returning to the ground from whence they came. Soon, only Cain remained, howling his victory. However, all was not well. Shards of the Catan flesh, driven deep into Cain's body by the cataclysmic demise of his foe, melted in the fires of the war god's wrath. The silver poison flowed into his bloodstream and forever tainted his physical incarnation with the aspect of the Reaper. Kalis Ra cannot truly die, for it is death incarnate. Raging at his defeat, its quintessence howled throughout space, entering every one of the Eldar race and cursing them with the terror of the grave. Thus it was that the seed of the Eldar's downfall was sown, and ultimately, the way of reincarnation was closed to them forever. Now it's difficult to know how much of the story is accurate because this description overlaps with other accounts of Eldar mythology. It also contradicts more recent accounts that describe how it was the Necron themselves who were responsible for the destruction of the Nightbringer Catan. In the Eldar mythology, the war in heaven begins by Cain slaying Eldanesh, but here, in the Harlequin's remembrance, we
Orcs aren't afraid of death because they weren't around yet when the Nightbringer cursed all of creation with it. Back in the first edition, the Emperor was just a powerful man. The Primarchs were just normal generals, Space Marines were just men in suits. Really? The Emperor's a dick. Well, I mean, they all used bolters. They didn't really have shooters back then. So every orc unit had a bolter. That's pretty sick.
We see the houses of the two Eldar heroes fighting alongside Cain. So you would assume that this takes place seemingly after the Eldar's own internal conflict, which fits somewhat into this confusing timeline. We do know that the Catan were being destroyed only toward the end of the war in heaven, and the Nightbringer is credited as bringing the fear of death to all mortal races. So this would again only be occurring late in the timeline after much damage had already been caused to the galaxy. More interestingly though, is that reference to the destruction of the Nightbringer and its bringing about the end to the Eldar's ability to reincarnate. This is a difficult and questionable statement, because as far as we know the Eldar only lost their ability to be reborn from the warp after the fall. So this reference is unclear. It could simply allude to the fact that the Eldar became aware that while they could be reborn, there was such a thing as death that they were entirely unfamiliar with from their own perspective previously, before the Nightbringer destroyed them and consumed their souls. But also this description of silver poison flowing into Cain's bloodstream, it could be a reference to this Catan somehow infecting the Eldar's psychic shared presence, or perhaps diminishing it in some way. It could be that the Eldar were unable to so easily resist the predatory nature of the warp.
Wait, what's epic 40k?
And found it more difficult to safely reincarnate, except that this grates somewhat against the belief of the Inari that when the Eldar god of the dead finally destroys Slaanesh, the Eldar will again be able to reincarnate from the warp, which would eliminate the fear of death, but then I suppose that's the entire point of Aeneid. Either way, the description doesn't really sit well with me, as it also clashes with some other details about the Eldar's soul. In a worst case scenario, it could even point to perhaps a suggestion that the Catan, as we know, do shatter into shards when destroyed, and that perhaps these shards entered Cain, that then when he himself was later shattered, these shards, which were apparently distributed to the Eldar Craftworld so as to enable his presence as the Avatar to come forth, could perhaps be Catan shards or elements or pieces of this. Again, I think it's quite a stretch and it's only coming from this one reference, but it's very unclear about the descriptions here and how they fit into the whole picture. Now the Eldar soul for me is actually critical to all of this. We learn fragmented pieces from the mythology about it here and there. We will
First edition 40k was pretty different. It's more of a rough draft in many ways. Things that we recognise, it became solidified in the second edition. Small scale minigame for large scale battles. Who killed Sonic? Like 40k micro machines. Oh.
We'll get into the meat of this in our next video and I'll lay it all out for you, but it has heavy implications for me on the origins of the Chaos Gods. The Eldar mythology is one of the more difficult pieces of lore to wrap your head around. This is mainly because of how vague and symbolic much of the descriptions surrounding them seem to be. There does seem to be something of a physical material element to them, yet it also seems very likely that they're nothing more than metaphors or an allegory for the Eldar themselves and the various ways their culture and technology have developed over millions of years.
Then there should be a rule you have to have 40,000 figures. I think that might be a barrier to entry considering how expensive they are. Epic 40k was supposed to simulate huge battles. Okay.
Much of it is told as ancient tales with little context of actual events, so we're left to infer and read between the lines, and there are a few references to this time. For example, he thought about the endless lives he had lived, lives he did not recall but could still feel in his immortal soul, and of the great cycles of the universe. How many wars in heaven had there been, he asked, struck by sudden thought. Necron Tyr and Eldari created these vaults together? Did all of this happen before? Scant references like these, though, are all we have to even vaguely reference this time beyond the mythology or Necron accounts, and it's unclear if we'll ever really know the truth. Some might say it's the pursuit of knowledge that's important, if indeed you ever truly know anything. After all, what is knowing? And for the Eldar, time and perception are perhaps the most important part of their entire civilization. It may be this is why they teach their history through dance and culture, more than endless archives that after a certain point become more problematic than useful, as the Imperium itself has seen. For the Eldar, perhaps the most important thing for us to know is that the literal details may not be all that important. It's the larger understanding that is more necessary. It's something few among their own toward the end of the 41st millennium have come to understand. Armed with such knowledge, it's possible that the Eldar, who have stared total annihilation in the face and been drifting lost for millennia, may have finally the vision to spark a rise that could position them once again as a galactic power with no...
with current 40k scaling, an Emperor Titan would have to be around 7 feet up tall. Fuck. You are an orc, thank you. Two men named Steve Jackson and Ian Livingston created Games Workshop and everything that came after it. They wrote hundreds of fantasy books before beginning to build the idea of Warhammer Fantasy and later 40k. That's really sick.
No
Imagine
limitations.
having that much attention.
This should be something that concerns the Imperium of Man significantly. The Imperium and mankind who are now ever more consumed by their own affairs. For it is known that the Eldar at one time had the power to extinguish stars and planets and then rebuild them. They had technology that allowed them to simply imagine a thing, and that it would manifest: a chair, a gun, a soldier, an army, a planet, an armada. They had this power, and far more importantly, they had the ability to be reborn over and over again, with no fear of death. And everything we know about the Old Ones, and my personal inclination, is that this was not part of evolution, this was by design. The Eldar were designed to fight a war of unending attrition, and if they're able to recapture that most powerful aspect, this could be immensely threatening to the rest of the galaxy. If the Inari and Aeneid can destroy Slaanesh, for the Eldar and the galaxy as a whole, the ultimate impact upon other races could be devastating.
Definitely not. They're not going to kill Slaanesh. The Ordinators of Oberon kind of sifted from the epic 40k models, why I feel it fits weird, trying to fit pre-90 stuff into a semi-current book. True, but second edition was the major foundation that all other editions were built on.
The Eldar are seen by other races as broken and insignificant. Indeed, as once the Eldar had looked down upon all of them, the Inari are determined to see that this will all change.
Good thing for Slaanesh that the Inari storyline didn't catch up on the way Games Workshop helped and got sidelined hard. Hey, listen. Slaanesh can't die. I would cry myself to sleep. So I was recommended to start this video here. So
Hi.
I will be. I accidentally pressed the wrong button. Yep, gotta go back to Abaddon again. I'm not having Slaanesh die. I'm not. She's never gonna die, and if she dies, I will riot so hard.
Everything is good. Asturian is praised. Consensual sex is at a record high. Then you visit 1,000 years later, and suddenly everyone is eating babies and putting their cocks in forbidden glory holes. It's a pretty obvious difference. Hence the Craftworlds basically gathered up as many still sane Eldar as they could, and fled the Eldar Empire just in time for the birth of Slaanesh and the fall of their civilization. Now, as the Craftworld were nomadic and often didn't see the Eldar Empire for many years, they didn't have access to all the best technology, whilst the Dark Eldar, who were in the Eldar Empire the whole time, were able to take a lot of it with them when they fled into the Webway.
I've just realised I've given no setup for this. This is the Eldar Craftworlds Explained by Major Kill.
Since the fall, the population of the Craftworlds has boomed, and so has their size. Once large trading vessels, many of them are now the size
I set this up in advance, and I did my best.
of continents and are powerhouses in their own right, hence the name Craftworld. We got it? Good. Let's begin. The first Craftworld on this list is Aliatok, who are famous for their chastity belts. I'm only half joking, these Eldar are extremely careful when it comes to anything related to Slaanesh, hence they are very strict, forcing their people to strictly follow the path of Asturian, which is basically means no fun. Because of this, a large amount of Eldar from Alatiok leave the Craftworld to become Rangers, allowing them the freedom to fucking have fun. They have so many Rangers that they've begun to develop a superior class of Ranger called Pathfinders. Ironic that the Craftworld with the biggest stick up its ass has the largest army of free-thinking Rangers. These Rangers haven't abandoned their home though, and they're always welcome to return. Sometimes in great need, they will be recalled home if the Craftworld is under threat. Alatiok has gone through some shit, which it usually handles well. The Craftworld has destroyed Tyranid splinter fleets and defeated demons. However, due to the Dark Eldar's bullshit fuckery, they were nearly destroyed. A Dark Eldar raiding party disguised as Eldar Corsairs from
To be honest, I like Abaddon as a concept, but he's kind of a writer trap. True, the Eldar probably won't kill Slaanesh, but they need some buffs and genuine wins. I agree, they do need some wins. Sure, I just mourn the days of Goth Rock, an orc birthing a litter of orclings and raising little ones and squigs decidedly not being orcoids, but small critters living from the trash that's adorable. Yet he's cursed to always lose because if he wins, the setting ends. Lucifer Black's major kill short video, 5 minutes. Wait, what? Well, I'll never believe Games Workshop will kill off a Chaos God and cut off 1/4 of the Chaos units out. Abby is cursed by Lex Luthor syndrome and inability to win because one gets stuck up against the protagonist.
Alatiok viciously raided Imperial worlds, hence the Imperium retaliated against Alatiok by attacking with a huge force, including an entire Space Marine chapter. The Eldar fought hard, but once again, Space Marine models sell more. Hence, despite being one of the main Craftworlds who are supremely well armed, they were pushed back into the inner parts of the Craftworld, even with the use of their Avatar of Cain and 3 Phoenix Lords, including Margan Ra, who we all know is an absolute demigod. Then one of the Rangers found out about the Dark Eldar's raiders who framed Alatiok for the memes, so he went to the surprisingly chill chapter master of the Marines and was like, "Mate, it's all a huge misunderstanding. The Dark Eldar did it." And the chapter master was like, "Oi bro, what do you mean? I've never seen a Black Eldar before." And then the Ranger was like, nah mate, Dark is in our evil dark cousins. We didn't do anything. And then the chapter master was like, "Oh fuck bro, sorry, my bad." And then the Ranger was like, nah man, it's all good, we all make mistakes, have a good one.
And they didn't instantly kill them? That sounds... mistaken identity is the reason why like 3/4 of people die. It's why Gilligan can't leave the island.
The Imperial forces withdrew and it was all good. Kinda dumb how a single Space Marine chapter and some guardsmen can nearly take down a high tier Craftworld, but I guess that's just how the cookie crumbles. Next up is the Black Library. Ooh, this super spooky and mysterious Craftworld stores all the knowledge that the Eldar race has on Chaos, and holy shit, it is a lot of knowledge. Most Eldar don't even know of this Craftworld's existence as it travels through the webway, and despite Ahriman having a raging boner for it, he has not been able to access it yet. Suck shit, Ahriman. It's like the most exclusive nightclub in the world, with only the Black Council, that being the best and brightest Farseers the Eldar have, as well as Solitaires, who are the greatest Eldar warriors around and are extremely hardcore, can access the library freely. Some humans have been able to access it due to them completely incorruptible and having mastered their inner chaos. Due to its nature, it supports a way smaller population than the other Craftworlds, and it relies more on insane levels of warding and Harlequins to defend.
That interaction feels distinctly Canadian. I completely agree with you. Plus, all Abby's stories end with, well, he actually didn't lose because he wanted to do this, which would be cool, but not after the 100th time. I agree with you. That does sound cute, Leo, and the lore is lesser without it.
It rather than large armies. Onto Baal Tan, who just love war. They love it. That shit's like lamb chowder to them. Baal Tan has a huge amount of elite aspect warriors, as well as their own unique tank variant that specializes in killing orcs. Baal Tan believes it can reforge the old Eldar Empire through genociding the other races, most notably the orcs. They often team up with humans to kill orcs. It's kind of ironic that the Eldar Craftworld that loves war and wears green armor hates the greenskins. Maybe they wish they were orcs, and got the idea that if they killed all orcs, they could assume their mantle. Baal Tan had grown confident. They often attacked anything on an Eldar maiden world that wasn't an Eldar, and those were often easy targets. They had slaughtered countless orcs and proved their valor time and time again, so it was very humbling for them that a Slaaneshi army would invade the heart of their craft world, causing massive amounts of damage and killing a lot of them. Their infinity circle was damaged, and the craft world was broken up into a mobile fleet, with even more warriors leaving Biotan to join the Ynnari. Things look pretty grim for Biotan. How were they supposed to bring back the Eldar Empire if after 10,000 years of trying, they were doing worse off than when they started? But then they were like, wait, even after the countless orcs we have killed and conquered, they never stop or give up. They never despair. How are we supposed to be the new orcs if we can't even match the current ones?
If you can't beat them, join them, I guess. True. Speaking of Eldar not getting loved, during the Horus Heresy, they mentioned how a whole legion would not be enough to take down a Craftworld. But recently, the Ultramarines took one down on their own. Ooh. Yeah, they're getting
With this new
ruined.
epiphany realised, Biotan rallied itself and attacked the galaxy with renewed vigour, its new status as a craft fleet working to its advantage as it's able to cover more ground. You go, wannabe orcs. After Biotan, we have a craft world who has eaten even more shit than them. Liandon. Liandon was one of the greatest craft worlds. It was they who forged the Infinity Circuits and gave the Eldar a chance to escape Slaanesh. They then teamed up with Biotan, as one craft world purged chaos from one side of the galaxy, the other did so on the opposite. Due to the webway connecting to the two craft worlds, it was common for them to reinforce each other despite the insane distance they were. Eventually Biotan got too horny for genocide against the other races, whilst Liandon wanted to keep purging just chaos, hence the close alliance they once had went kaput. Despite this, Liandon would continue to beast mode, and eventually a powerful warrior called Uriel rose up and took command of Liandon's fleet. He smashed through chaotic armies like nothing, even wiping out an entire Chaos warband. However, by him leading the Liandon fleet on a preemptive strike against said warband, the warband was able to fire 36 planet-busting nukes at the craft world. These nukes could not be easily intercepted, as all of Liandon's ships were massacring chaos, hence the Craftworld's defences were able to wipe out 35 of the 36 nukes. One got through. Ouch. A big part of the Craftworld blew up, and despite their victory, Prince Uriel was exiled. Things were about to go from bad to worse for Liandon. A fuck-off huge Tyranid hive fleet was on the way to eat them, and the legendary Farseer Eldrad saw it coming and was like, yo, Liandon, some rather unpleasant hentai monsters are coming to eat you, and Liandon was like, fuck off Eldrad, you old nerd. Hence the hive.
Me? I didn't see the 10th edition trailer. Isn't that the one that you sent me, Dan? I'm sure I reacted to it. I mean, Heresy, era Eldar, and current Eldar are very much not the same. Opposite. Ha! The Eldar are kind of the butt monkeys of 40k. They ought to, after 60 million years ahead, start to be able to fend off some right to out primates, and yet Monkai are winning. Damn.
Hive fleet attacked Liandon, and boy oh boy did the Eldar die.
Oh, yay!
Roughly 80% of the Craftworld had been overrun when Prince Uriel returned from exile with a fleet of Eldar Corsairs. He was like Space Rohan saving Space Minas Tirith from Space Orcs, except they were Tyranids, but you know what I mean. The Hive fleet was beaten after Uriel took up the Spear of Twilight and killed the Hive Tyrant with it. It was the most Pyrrhic of Pyrrhic victories, as Liandon now had to support a huge army of Wraithguard and other undead Eldar warriors. Over the next few years, Liandon would be attacked time and time again by Orcs, the Imperium, Chaos and Tyranids, and time again, Uriel would slaughter his enemies, but the spear was eating his soul, and he didn't have much life left in him. But then the Ynnari happened, and suddenly he's good again, cause Ynned is awesome, and definitely has no hidden grimdark side effects. Somehow Liandon actually seemed to be on the upper. Whilst Uriel kept the Craftworld safe, others on Liandon were fulfilling a hectic prophecy that was super handy. So yeah, there you go. Just because 80% of your friends and family get eaten by space bugs of death, doesn't mean it's GG. But then they were attacked again, but then it was okay. Again. Yeah, poor Liandon. Next up for the main Craftworlds is Samhan, and they're just here to party. If you took the White Scars, made them Eldar, then de-Asianified them, you would get Samhan, as they love jet bikes, quick attacks, and dumplings. Due to this simpler life, as well as the fact that Sam Han abandoned the Elder Empire well before the fall, they haven't had too many issues compared to, let's say, I don't know, Liandon. They are a hot-blooded people who like fighting but not waging war. Due to their dickheadiness, the other Craftworlds don't really like them, hence they don't get dragged into many of the other conflicts.
If you now know about what happened after the trailer, Castor Sicarius dropped down and took the planet back with his food.
Even when the Ynnari arrived to recruit some of them, a Dark Elder assassination squad arrived and interrupted the meeting, meaning Yvraine couldn't really drum up much support. On her next attempt, I would recommend to her that she just tell the people of Sam Han that Ynned has super fast awesome jet bikes. Yeah, that should do it. The final main Craftworld is Ulthwé, home of a cool colour scheme and Eldrad, who is by far the most impactful Eldar and even one of the characters in the entire setting. Ulthwé is full of nerds. It has so many nerds, and by nerds I mean warlocks and farseers, that it barely has any Chad aspect warriors. This is likely due to the fact that it was unable to properly escape the fall of the Eldar, hence the Craftworld has been caught in the gravitational pull of the Eye of Terror. Kind of ironic that the Craftworld with the most amount of dudes that can see the future couldn't figure out that they probably needed to leave a couple days earlier. As I was saying though, their proximity to the Eye of Terror is probably why so many of them have awesome nerd psycho powers, cause you know, warp spaghetti and whatnot. As Ulthwé doesn't have many aspect warriors, to compensate, their guardians are really powerful, and they're called the Black Guardians, cause of their armor obviously. What were you thinking, you racist piece of— They also employ the use of battle warlocks, hence they are more than capable of defending or attacking despite the lack of screechy bitches.
I would like to see the Necrons go against the Eldar again. I think that'd be really, really interesting.
By far their biggest strength though is their really accurate and solid ability to see the future. Unfortunately, this seems to be coupled with intense autism, which continues to ruin any relationship the Imperium might have with the Eldar. For example, Ulthwé sees that a planetary governor has secretly fallen to chaos and will turn his planet into a big-ass demon-filled warp gate, causing mass damage and suffering. Hence Ulthwé would send in a strike team to kill the governor and then leave. They just saved billions of lives and resources, yet all the Imperium saw is an esteemed governor just got blown up. Another example is that a huge orc Wah is due to attack a Tau planet.
Wah!
Hence Ulthwé raids the planet in order to put the Tau on alert and prepare for war, hence meaning they are prepared for the orcs and defeat them. But all the Tau see is that Ulthwé were being dicks and just coincidentally worked out. If Ulthwé showed themselves as reliable to the other races, then they could simply tell the other races of shit that is going to go down, rather than having to antagonize themselves. Time and time again, Ulthwé does the right thing in the wrong way, and despite their foresight, they often miss out on minor details, which results in Eldar lives being lost. Now that's Ulthwé summed up pretty much, but I don't want to include Eldrad's accomplishments here because Ulthwé is always yelling at him or trying to banish him, so I don't want to give them any credit. I'm starting to think that there's a long linear correlation between being able to see the future and having poor people skills. Now onto some of the more minor but still badass Craftworlds, we have Altansar. Whilst Ulthwé fucked up and got caught in the Eye of Terror's gravitational pull, forcing it to orbit it, Altansar really fucked up and got sucked into the Eye of Terror. Now the Eye of Terror isn't the warp, it's shit and I would give it a 1-star in TripAdvisor, but it isn't literal hell, it's like entry level hell. Hence, despite Altansar being in the Eye of Terror, for mostly unknown reasons—
Entry level hell, I don't know why I wouldn't let me pause that then. You should watch Wise 40k Settings of Bleak in 2 sentences by Norman after that lesson about mythological times. I'll certainly look into that.
They survived for 10,000 years. The lore states that they had some subtle help from Ynned, but my theory is that this was the Craftworld that produced Margan Ra, and considering Margan is by far the most powerful and badass Eldar running around, it makes sense that his Craftworld can kick some serious demon ass. Eventually Margan, who was able to escape his Craftworld before it got sucked by the Eye, decided that he would just go and get it. Hence he went into the Eye of Terror, found his still living Craftworld, and dragged it out into real space. Now just because they survived doesn't mean they're unscathed. The Eldar of Altansar speak only in whispers and do not remove their helmets, which while sounds a bit silly, makes complete sense. If you were forced to play hide and seek for 10,000 years lest you get raped by demons, I'm sure you wouldn't want to speak too loudly either. Altansar have recently come out and supported the Ynnari, but the other Eldar think that Altansar are a bunch of weirdos, as there's no way a normal person can live in the Eye of Terror for 10,000 years. Next up is Ilkaith, which is a less known Craftworld but still quite cool. They constantly fight against chaos and have the best bone singers around. Bone Singers are Eldar builders and blacksmiths who rarely fight, but Ilkath have managed to train their Bone Singers to be able to play fucking Minecraft mid-battle and use it to turn the tide. They often ally with Mankind and Dark Eldar in their war against Chaos. Onto Librasil, which for lack of a better term is a feminine craftworld. Fuck the patriarchy, am I right? As such, they have a ton of howling banshees and pay special attention to female Eldar gods, and will try recover artifacts such as the Tear of Isha or other random bullshit on the old Eldar crone worlds. Now we have Kalor, who kinda suck. They barely talk to the other craftworlds and have a really stupid political system. Even the Harlequins don't hang out with these guys. Basically, they have political families that form houses that are always vying for control. The aspect shrines promise not to get involved in the politics, hence after thousands of years of political bullshit, no wars, no contact with other craftworlds, and no aspect warriors telling them to pull their heads out of their own asses, the craftworld begun to restart its mass blood orgies, like the ones that caused the fall of the Eldar. Then they had a civil war. These guys could honestly all blow up one day and no one would even notice, that's just how irrelevant they are. The craftworld with the stupidest fate award goes to Malan Tai. Malan Tai fought against the splinter feet of High Fleet Naga.
Not gonna lie, not a fan of the elves, but that Magun Rad deadad. Ooh, tell me more.
And they won the battle. However, a small experimental Tyranid was able to slip past and find its way into their Eldar's Infinity Circuit, where it began to eat souls, and grew into a gigantic invincible monster that destroyed the rest of the craftworld. No, I'm not joking. Couple things wrong with this. A craftworld's Infinity Circuit is their most prized thing ever. I doubt they would ever leave it unattended for that long, especially after a battle. And B, souls have little to no nutritional value. Get it right, GW. Onto Luganeth now, who despite being a bunch of renegades that like raiding shit, are actually solid dudes. The other craftworlds aren't big fans of Lugganath due to Lugganath spending most of their time partying with the Harlequins. Can't say I blame them, the Harlequins are wild. Lugganath almost exclusively only fights Chaos, and are responsible for the destruction of multiple Chaos warbands, as well as fighting Ahriman off the Black Library. Now we have the Mymeria, who are surprisingly deep lore considering how irrelevant they are. Unlike a lot of the other craftworlds, Mymeria was built during the fall of the Eldar to act as an ark for the planet of, you guessed it, Mymeria. For millennia, these dudes and dudettes thought that they were the only craftworld around, and eventually they spawned the legendary Phoenix Lord Aureliath. His arrival taught Mymeria how to properly defend itself and actually kind of be a part of the galaxy. And then he went off and died because, I don't know, it was funny or something. A craftworld that teaches us a lesson is Kira Yis. Slaanesh had a huge boner for this craftworld, but her demons were unable to find a way in. Hence one of the Keeper of Secrets pretended to be an Eldar male and downloaded Tinder. He was able to match with a naive maiden girl who invited him into the craftworld to hold hands and shit. I don't know how Tinder works. While there, the Disguised Keeper deactivated the craftworld's anti-rape defenses, hence the full force of Slaanesh invaded, killing everyone on board and devouring their souls. Oh yeah, and the Disguised Keeper of Secrets possessed the craftworld's avatar of Cain, because that's a thing apparently. Good going, maiden, you horny bitch. The final minor craftworld is that of Yim Lok, who are known for their ability to build tanks and titans. Their titans are the biggest and badder Eldar titans around. Finally, at least one group of Eldar respect the rules of 40k, that being the bigger the better. They also have a proto-Death Star which is powered by souls. Unfortunately, a soul death laser beam constitutes a war crime, hence Yimlock haven't been able to use it yet. The fuck thing is that in terms of craftworlds, we aren't even halfway there yet. However, the rest of them are so minor that they're barely worth a mention. But this video is every craftworld explained, so buckle up, buckaroo. And Lossus and Dolphy are craftworlds known for happily teaming up with the Imperium. Isaridi nearly was destroyed when the changeling demon impersonated a solitaire and launched an invasion. Dorai are a bunch of pretentious assholes who think they're better than even the other Eldar. Karansk often fight the Ultramarines, hence often lose. Miros is doomed. Cthulhu is lost. Telenar is the only craftworld that the Harlequins don't recruit from. Varantha has pretty gems and nice flowers. Idaraha was destroyed by the Legion of the Damned for some stupid fucking reason that makes no sense. Ila Manesh was destroyed by the Night Lords. Lunasad tried to hide in the webway but accidentally went to the heart of chaos itself and got sodomized. Mori Riori was destroyed by the Imperium during the Great Crusade, so was Thulelia by the Space Wolves, Zartan got cucked by the Greenskins during the War of the Beast, and Murgeith got clapped by Slanesh. Araksh Quinn, Anghi, Karas Mitha, Mael Khan, Nakarintati, Still Lut, Tilval, Yi Aroth, and Xandros have next to no information about them, but they are likely still floating around somewhere, whilst Aachen, Belshamon, Kolthsi, Lanemenashk, Theriminanger, Urithiel, and Zulasa were destroyed at an unknown time for unknown reasons.
Okay.
Holy fuck, I feel like an Indian with how much pseudo-Hindu I've been speaking. When I put out this video idea, a bunch of you laughed at me, and now
I'm done with that. Okay. Everyone. Thank you so much for coming in today. I really appreciate it. That was our intro to Xenos. I don't know what we're doing next week. Throw in some videos down below and I'll pick one. I'll just be like, you! Ta-da! That's the fairest way I can do this. Anyway! I am proud of y'all for getting through today. Even more proud of you for getting through tomorrow. Arrivederci, arrivederci, good as should as, aloego. Peace! See you on the next one.